All right, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap this week's Mets versus Diamondbacks series, a real big series for the Mets. Lots going on, lots of good, lots of bad. We'll get into it, as well as all the other news and rumors over the past few days. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for this very podcast, which is now recorded on Sundays and Thursdays, permitting with lining up the series. Sometimes they go on different days. But for those of you who are watching on playback in the future, you want to join the conversation, make sure to turn on our post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat right now, I want to let you guys know we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all of that stuff, all of your instant thoughts about this team. And if you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. You're just being starred throughout the show, so we can pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, remember to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features Frank's instant reactions after every single game, titled the Mets Frankly Post Game. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. on Mondays and Fridays the following day after these are recorded. So let's get into episode number 78. And you guys may notice there's a guy in the middle of the screen. Andrew, where have you been? You're finally here. You finally decided to show up. What's going on?
Well, rhinos do wild things. I was getting hunted. It was rhino season, so I was kind of hiding away from all these, scalpers and all that. But again, life happens. But hey, coming back on a series win, that's always great. The Mets are playing competitive baseball going into September. Everything is great. Why is everybody so negative? But we'll get realistic a little bit.
He never shows up. He always just enters in here. What an asshole. Anyways. Now, for those of you watching live or on playback, you may also notice two empty panel slots on your screens. That means today we are being joined by two special guests. These two are fellow New York Ranger fans, just such as myself, so they are automatically tired of falling short in the Eastern Conference Finals every year, but they're also Mets fans as well. Please help us welcome Evan and Matt from the Mets and Rangers Central podcasts. Guys, good to have you on here. Evan, I'll go to you first. If you want to plug anything or let everybody know where to find you, good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. If you want to find content, Mets, Rangers, Mets Central, Rangers Central, and yeah, you'll get honest takes on the Rangers there if you're a Ranger fan, just like you do here. Very angry takes as well because of, like Carson mentioned, tired of falling short every year, but yeah, you could find us there.
All right. And Matt, you are his co-host as well. Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, just first of all, I want to say what's up, guys. If you guys want to follow me at Winarkiewicz, you're gonna have to learn how to spell it yourself. I'm not gonna teach anybody, so that's on you. But yeah, like I said, like Evan said, follow us on Met Central. We're always posting things every night after a game. We do post-game reactions after every series. We do a live podcast. Also, you can find me on Rangers Central as well. I'm part of that podcast, and I'm also starting up a Rangers channel myself this year. So if anyone is interested in that, you can follow that at Mad Talks Rangers.
All right. So their links to their show and their individual Twitters, all that stuff is in the description below, along with all of us individually, your usual co-hosts. And I guess you can include the third mic, which is Andrew now, because he's barely here. And today he just decided to show up. But as for someone who has a lot of better attendance, Frank, you're here in front of a brick wall. I'm not even going to ask, to be honest. After once again, another stressful series, shall we say, how are you feeling going into Chicago now? I think you're muted, bud. I think you're muted. I don't know if we can hear you, but still can't hear you. I don't know.
Get out of your jail. Yeah, turn the Wi-Fi in your jail cell up.
All All right. Well, as he continues to still figure that out, let's just say that the Mets are coming off of a series in Arizona that was very crucial to this playoff race, which, yes, there probably was a possibility that they could have took advantage of a lot of different opportunities, and we talk about this all the time. And yeah, it's possible. Frank, you might have to start using sign language. That's a good thing. But
Just
the
right on the
main
brick wall.
feeling going into this next series, coming out of Arizona, a team that I believe on the broadcast they said has not lost a home series since like June. They are red hot, one of the hottest teams in baseball. Andrew, I'll go to you. What do you think, just in general, about this series, these last 3 games?
Again, it's a series win that you should feel happy. Again, a team that's chasing you has been arguably the hottest team in baseball, and you go into their place, take 2 out of 3. You would think normally you're popping bottles, celebrating. You picked up a little ground on them, but then you look at that middle game, you're like, you feel empty because you should have swept them. Like, you should have went into their place like you did last year, gone into Arizona and swept them in their own ballpark. But we'll get to that malfunction. But again, overall, the offense continues to be this hot and cold. Goes 6 innings without scoring, and then 1 inning they'll score 7 runs, and then continue to go back to the 7 consecutive shutout innings of not scoring any runs. The bullpen, you had another big injury, which is, seems like every week it seems like. Reed Garrett continues to be put in high leverage, I guess. I mean, again, I think most of us are kind of past that, trust level and confidence in this guy. But, again, they keep running out. It's better than Adam Ottavino at this point. But, again, it just shows, they take 2 out of 3. You should be happy. But you're kind of left empty because you had that ability to sweep them and take full advantage. And, then, of course, the day you lose, of course, the Braves win. So you got to go down another game below them. So it's all about missed opportunities. But, again, hey, a team that's better than you, it continues the trend of the Mets can play good against the good teams in baseball. I'm scared of the shit of the White Sox because they can't beat bad teams. So, going into this weekend, that's a different discussion. But overall, you should be happy, but a little empty inside.
Yeah. Frank, I'll go to you if your mic is up for the task.
I have a mic. It's not the mic, but it is a mic, so at least that's something. We're going to have to mess with the settings a little
You're
bit.
pretty loud, but
Is it?
hold on. Yeah, you might have to wait. I think you're good now. You should be good.
Okay. How about now? How we feel
There you
about that?
That's good. All right, you have
All
the
right.
echo on. So.
Oh, God. Yeah, no. Mainly it's just another West Coast swing, so that's never fun. Just kind of having to stay up till 12:30, thinking you're going to win the game, and then you don't. So on the East Coast, that definitely is very rough to see that. But I'm glad all these West Coast games are over. But like Andrew said, beating Arizona, which, I mean, it's a big task with how hot they've been playing. Yes, there's no Ketel Marte, no Christian Walker, and you didn't face Zach Gallen, you didn't face, Merrill Kelly. But all in all, it still was nice to see them pull together the win, get the big hits they needed from their stars. Like Alonso finally having a pretty big series was huge. They definitely needed that. Lindor still doing his thing. We're going to get to him later. So I think just kind of seeing a lot of these guys step up, like Jose Iglesias, like he continues to be a productive player for this team in big games when he's not someone that was on the opening day roster. It really stinks that Nunez is down again because I feel like he's a huge part of what they could do. Do they win yesterday's game if Nunez is healthy? Maybe. But I just think overall, I don't love the playing shorthanded and this whole he wasn't available and the Mets knew that, but we didn't. So because Nunez isn't available, we're going to just throw everybody else 2 days in a row and risk injuring Reed Garrett again and messing up his effectiveness again just because we don't want to just send a guy to the IL and we're just going to play this waiting game and playing shorthanded. And the fact that you don't trust Ryan Stanek, you're just really playing shorthanded. So that's what happens is that oh, why are so many guys working 2 days in a row? Because one guy is hurt and the other guys you just want to avoid at all costs. Because what it comes down to, I'll let our guest go after this, but with Ottavino, what is his role? You can't tell me that you can't get more value out of a long reliever. Because what I was afraid of is when Severino takes a ball off his foot, how do I not know that Severino's done in the second inning or third inning? Who's coming in next? I just feel like they can get so much more value out of having a long reliever on this roster than just Ottavino for blowouts. I just don't see that as a valuable roster spot right now.
Evan, I'll throw it over to you if you want to answer anything with Ottavino. I think you've been pretty much on the same train as all of us with the usage of Ottavino, the need for Ottavino, as to why he is just here at all. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I call him Mr. 2/3 of an inning for a reason. He just is not getting the job done enough. If the guy can't complete innings, it just makes no sense why he's continues to get thrown out there. Meanwhile, Alex Young could be sent on a bus to Syracuse because we have to keep Ottavino around just because he's a veteran and everything. I don't get it. But in terms of the series as a whole, it's just similar to the San Diego series where, you know, if you told me going into the series they were going to win the series, I'd be like, yeah, that's great. But you look at the second game and it's just missed opportunity yet again. And it's similar to 2019, like I think everybody's mentioned at this point, where they continue to just shoot themselves in the foot on opportunities that they have, whether it's the bullpen blowing a game or this offense, like Andrew said, that just scores in bunches, and that's really about it. You know, runners in scoring position continues to be an issue even today. They didn't thrive until the ninth inning, where Iglesias did have that big hit, which it's nice to see him get the contributions there. But, you know, the offense just way too streaky. They don't have a set batting lineup, and we're rolling into September. Like, I'm watching Starling Marte hit 2 or 3, which just should not be happening in 2024. Like, his at bats, especially that last at bat, what was he doing? It was just pathetic. But yeah, overall, I mean, you're happy they take it, but I said it on the post game that I did with Matt yesterday. This team needs to string together some winning streak here at some point, because you can't just keep going 2 out of 3 or something like that. You know, it's just not enough with where you are in the standings. At some point, you got to get that big win streak like the Padres had, like the Diamondbacks had.
yeah, I definitely agree with that there, because I will say they have come to a point where they're about, I guess it's now a month left the season now, about 28 games, 29 games left. And not only do they need wins, they also need timely wins, where if the Braves lose, they need to capitalize on that. And they just have not really been able to they haven't been able to make their move in the standings. And hopefully, you know, when you do have the Braves coming up, which is going to be the second to last series, just like 2 years ago, I personally think that's where it's going to come all the way down to, because that's kind of been the gap between the Mets and the Braves, kind of a 2 to 3 to 4 game gap. And, you know, I feel like that's what it's going to be. But there's higher stakes as compared to what happened 2 years ago, where they just needed to win one goddamn game to get a tiebreaker over them. Now they're going to probably have to take 3 out of 4 from them at the pace that they're going. But again, that's games down the line. They have the White Sox in front of them, who they should beat. But from the standpoint of Arizona, Matt, what do you think from this series, the main takeaways you got?
So for me, going into the West Coast road trip, this 10-game road trip, I said go 7-3 for me. Find a way to split with the Padres, take the series from the Diamondbacks, and sweep the White Sox. And if you told me before this road trip that, listen, you're going to go 4-3 against the Padres and the Diamondbacks, I would have shook your hand. I was like, yo, fair play. I'll take it. Because right now this team needs wins, and coming up against 2 really good teams, you're like, just get me any wins at any cost you can. But I got to be honest, I'm really underwhelmed here, because really this team should be 6-1 right now on this road trip. And look, listen, I understand you're not going to win every single game, and it's going to happen from time to time where you're going to have a bullpen implosion. Your best relievers are not going to have it sometimes. But even like instead of 4-3, this team could be 5-2 right now, and it's another game or another half game that they make up on the Braves. And it's at this point, it's little margins. But yeah, I mean, look, my takeaway from this series so far is, apart from the Sevy game, you had Sean Manaea again, who's continuing his dominance so far. You had David Peterson, another strong start from him. The offense continues to be just bipolar in terms of, you know, they're hitting in bunches here, but then they're completely quiet there. And it's just, it's not looking good in terms of the offense part, because, and listen, I'm sure we'll get to it talking about Eric Chavez and why he needs to go. And I know you guys aren't big fans of him either, but yeah. And then Carlos Mendoza did have some questionable decisions with the bullpen last night. Like, I can't lie. I'm not going to sit here and say that, obviously Diaz blew the game, right? That's all him, right? But I'm not going to sit here and acting like, Mendy going to guys like Brazaban and Reed Garrett and Maton in back-to-back days. I'm not going to say that's a stroke of genius, because in reality, on any other day, after Sevy gives up that 2-out double in the, what was it, the fourth inning or the fifth inning, on another day, Huascar Brazaban on the first pitch is taken deep, and the game's pretty much over from there. So he did get lucky in terms of that sense, but yeah, listen, good to win a series, but underwhelmed, as I said.
Yeah, there were definitely still major concerns that we've seen throughout this entire season, I would say, throughout this series. Just, I mean, it continues to be a trend. The walks come back to bite them. They just continue just to extend the inning. There's not really much defensive miscues as there used to be. Let's just say that at the beginning of the season. But I will say that when they just constantly walk batters, eventually it is going to come back to bite you. And that's kind of the vulnerability aspect of every single pitcher. And one thing I will say, even though, it's kind of jumping ahead, one thing I will say is I know a lot of people were a little bit worried with Edwin Diaz going out to the mound in the third game, but I was actually very pleased to see him go out there the following day after blowing the game, because we all know how the mental aspect is with Edwin Diaz, of how he gets into his head. The one thing that to see him just like kind of face it head on from yesterday and not dwell on it from the day before, I feel like that's a decent way to put him in a position to get him a confidence boost. He was able to get 2 strikeouts, soft pop-up or whatever, and he was able to bounce back. He got his redemption. I feel like that is definitely I wouldn't say it's a hats off to Carlos Mendoza, because there have been questionable moves throughout this entire series. But one thing I will say is that I think putting Diaz in a position where, yes, he's still in that high leverage position, and yes, we still have that worry of, well, what if he blows it again? But that's the only way that they're going to find a way to get that consistency from him. Not to mention the full-on usage of Edwin Diaz has been a little bit questionable as to where Edwin Diaz is a pitcher that really likes to pitch a lot. They haven't been putting him in these They haven't been putting him in a lot of these situations or these tied games, because there hasn't been many opportunities to do so. I'm not saying put him in the 9th inning no matter what every single day or 5 out of 7 days, but the usage has been questionable, and then you're going to get some of those blow-ups like that. But again, it is inexcusable. It was definitely a backbreaker there. Some people said that maybe that was the Kurt Suzuki moment yesterday, and it's possible that it was. And I'm not going to deny that at all. And Diaz was one of the main reasons, if not the reason, why they didn't make the playoffs in 2019. If you want to go all the way back 5 years ago, believe it or not, that was 5 years ago. I mean, I've always been someone who's defended Edwin Diaz to the ends of the earth. Andrew and Frank, you guys can attest to that since the beginning of time. But at this point, I mean, he definitely picked quite a moment to do that. Let's just say that. But he got his bounce back, so I'm good with that. Andrew, did I go to you after here or no? Okay. There's just a lot of people on the panel here, so gets a little confusing. So let's get into what happened.
You good?
What happened? Who? Oh, okay. Let's get into the full-on series rundown of everything that went on in these 3 games. Any other takeaways we can put out there as well. Excuse me. All right, so game 1, Sean Manaea rolled through 6 innings, 11 strikeouts with his 4th start with 10 or more strikeouts this season. He had a rough 7th, but it was protected by tons of run support. Pete Alonso opened it up with a solo home run. You had 2 RBIs from Jeff McNeil. Vientos drove in a run as well. Alvarez broke his hitless streak since the walk-off home run with an RBI. Winker and Taylor also drove in runs, and the bullpen was clean from there. Garrett, Maton, Young, Ottavino, and the Mets did not walk a single batter in this game, also known as a miracle. And the Mets took game 1, 8-3. Game 2, Luis Severino struggled to get out of the fifth inning, allowing 4 earned runs, but with 9 strikeouts. The Mets offense did pick him up with 5 unanswered runs, an RBI double by JDM, an RBI single by Alvarez, a game-tying home run by Harrison Bader, and the Mets would take a 5-4 lead on a sac fly by Pete Alonso after Starling Marte manufactured the run all by himself with a bunt single, a stolen base, and getting under a horrendous tag at home. Thank you so much for that horrendous defense. But the disaster did strike in the 8th inning. Edwin Diaz would come on for a 4-out save, an absolute meltdown, walking the first 2 hitters and giving up a grand slam to Corbin Carroll. And that pretty much put the nail in the coffin for Game 2, 8-5. Game 3, David Peterson was great once again, ran into a lot of traffic, but he limited the damage well. Pete Alonso started the scoring again with a solo shot, which passed Mike Piazza for 3rd all-time on the Mets franchise home run list. Francisco Lindor had a huge game-tying home run in the 6th. Nimmo, Winker, and McNeil all had 2-hit games, and the big one came in the 9th, of course, with Jose Iglesias plating a 2-out double by Winker, with Edwin Diaz coming in to close it out, getting a massive redemption, as we said, from the day before to secure the series win. The Mets now are at 70-64 as we speak, sitting 3.5 games out of the final wildcard spot as we anxiously watch Phillies versus the Braves right now, which I believe the Braves are still winning. I saw that the Phillies had someone on. No, they just stranded them. Now it's 4-0 Atlanta, so it might be 4 by the end of the night. Frank, I will go to you from the full takeaways if you want to just not rant about Ottavino again, because I feel like that's beating a dead horse. But what do you got from everything that you saw in these last 3 games?
Yeah, no, I think seeing Manaea step up again. Is the mic bad again?
You're good. I think you're
Good?
You should be good now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
Just
seeing
keep the echo.
Okay.
Yeah, just keep the echo off.
Right. All right. So seeing Manaea come through again was huge. But I think overall, seeing the Mets offense fight back last night was encouraging. I mean, I really hoped that they were going to win that game because they were down 4-0, and you're like, Rodriguez is shoving, they're not going to have anything going. And then they start stringing hits together. I mean, Alvarez, 2 strikes, 2 outs. I mean, they were just, and even Bader, he getting like a really big hit there and tying it up. And then the Mets take the lead, and you're like, okay, here we go. Like, what could have been a huge win turned into a huge loss. And I think that's like the really frustrating part about it is, you know, like we were saying, is that, oh, you know, you won the series against Arizona, but like the sweep was literally right there. And then just back to my bullpen rant, but like they put Nunez on the injured list, but then they didn't call anyone else up. So they're still playing shorthanded. And I don't know. I just feel like if you know that you have a pitcher who could be down at any point, like why is Alex Young not in Arizona ready to be called up? You know, if you know that maybe any day you're bound to put Nunez on the injured list. Like, I just don't know. And, like, even the reports that they had to do a closed-door meeting or whatever to talk to Nunez with, like, Hefner and Mendoza, like, it's just everything about it was just so bizarre. I just really just didn't get any of that. And it was frustrating because it was a very similar situation to San Diego where they're asking Diaz to be like, okay, we need you to do the 8th and do the 9th. If he doesn't have it, oh, well, we don't have a backup plan. And that's the part that I don't really like is that I feel like if Nunez is down again on the injured list and Budo is going to be walking batters, I feel like for now, they need to trust Maton a little more. I feel like he's been the one other guy who's been steady enough to where he's not going to walk the ballpark, and he's been getting the job done. Because in the game when Budo couldn't get the job done, you have Maton get 1 out, and then you just say, okay, Diaz, now give us 2 innings. And then even this game last night where Maton gets a couple guys out, a single is given up. And it's like, okay, get him out there. Get Diaz in the 8th inning immediately. You know what I mean? I just feel like they're not really giving Maton a fair shot, even though he's been doing well. And it would put you into the situation where it's like you don't have to overextend Diaz and need him to have it, because I just don't like this idea of like we're going into the game, Diaz needs to give us more than an inning, and if he doesn't have it, oh well. I just think like that's not really the best game plan strategy, like from a managerial standpoint. It's just like I feel like you should have backup plans. And what really stinks is that we look at the way they used Ryan Stanek when he first got here in the 8th inning, and now they don't do that anymore. I feel like they envisioned that Stanek was going to be a high leverage guy, but it's just been so bad that he's kind of in the Ottavino role too. He's just like, we randomly see him. Like what we see in like the 4th inning that one time in San Diego, whatever, when it was Blackburn got hurt. Like it's just been very odd, just a lot of the way they're utilizing some of these guys. And I feel like they're going to just kind of run into the same problem they had, especially with Reed Garrett, where they're just going to overuse him, and then he could end up getting hurt or something like that. So I just feel like it's kind of those same mistakes that could end up hurting them in the long run that really concern me. But I think overall, like I said earlier, just seeing your stars step up, especially Alonso hit your home runs, that was good. Seeing Nimmo have a big series is really big. And then still just with the lineup, every day someone somewhere completely new. Marte's second, Marte's third. Now JD Martinez is like batting sixth. Like everyone's just all over the place every day. So that's just kind of weird. But I also want to give props to Marte having that big inning that got the Mets the lead. Infield single, stolen base, sacrifice fly. Like utilizing his legs, coming off of a knee injury. It was nice to see him do Starling Marte-like things, because we talked about our last episode, he's getting singles, great and all, but you need multiple tools out of him. And seeing him make it all happen just off a single and still be able to score without getting a hit, like those are the things that can help you when your guys are struggling with runners in scoring position. You can't get a hit with runners in scoring position. You're still able to score because of someone's speed, with a stolen base, a ground out, a sacrifice fly. Like it's those little things like that that can really help an offense that's struggling with runners on base. So I think that like we talk about September call-ups and maybe calling up Acuna or someone like that. Like it shows you like what it could do to kind of help you out when you guys are in a slump offensively with runners on.
Yeah, I was just actually going to bring that up of Luis Angel Acuna, because it seems like athleticism and versatility is something that they're going to be prioritizing, which, again, I'm okay with, because, again, like we've talked about, offensively, this team is a deep team. They have a deeper lineup as compared to what they had last year, where past the 5-hole, it was just like absolutely nothing. And I think that is probably the best way to look at it, and hopefully they utilize Luis Angel Acuna in the way of him actually just using his legs and not really counting on him to be, the savior of any savior, because again, they do have other infield options. So Beatty out of the equation right now. So Luis Angel Acuna seems like the biggest possibility. I don't know if they add anybody else into the equation there from AAA, but it seems like versatility, which he can play the outfield and the infield, not to mention the speed that he does have, kind of just, adding in, like, I'm not saying like a pinch runner, but I'm just saying adding in just another type of spark plug you can add to this roster. I'm not big on the guy, but I can say right now that the Mets do lack that. And they've been trying to see that from Marte, and he's slowed down. He's 35 years old. You definitely expect that from him. But it also comes from a point of frustration where, that's what we're paying him to do. We're paying him, almost $20 million a year to give you those tools and those value, because we're not just expecting this guy to just hit singles. If he does hit a single, we want to see him steal some bases. We also want some defense from him, which he's been better at. Before his injury, he was horrendous. But I'll flip it over to you, Evan. What do you think about, Luis Angel Acuna, stuff like that? Keep that flow of the conversation going. What do you think?
No, yeah, I'm completely fine with the idea of bringing him up. To me, it was one or two guys. The other one just not as versatile. Drew Gilbert was the only other guy I was really like, I'd maybe like to see him get a shot. But I have no issue, especially since he's starting the heat up in AAA. And obviously, since Beatty's out, it's going to be someone that's an infielder and can play the infield, because his team doesn't really have anyone on the bench that could do that. So I have no issue with it at all, especially because we see late in games them utilize pinch runners all the time. And it's just like there are times where I'd rather watch personally Acuna run the bases versus watching like JD Martinez at one point in the series. There was an opportunity to pinch run for him, and they didn't. I would rather see Acuna come in, who could be that spark plug, maybe steal a bag, set up more opportunities with runners in scoring position late in games. So it's about little things like that, or maybe even help set up sacrifice fly situations, maybe get some bunt situations, whatever it may be. I don't have an issue with it because, to me, like I said, if it wasn't going to be him, then I want it to be Gilbert, because the last thing they need is DJ Stewart coming back up here and doing a whole lot of nothing. I don't really know who else they really could have called up, to be honest. Like, outside of Acuna, there really isn't a lot of options, in my opinion.
I think DJ Stewart's pretty much been pushed out of the equation when they said, like, athleticism and versatility. Like, that ain't DJ Stewart. We know that isn't. So
it sounded
I think
like
that's
it to
out of
me.
the equation, but yeah. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe they flipped the script around. I mean, it's still like, 48 hours from that happening. So, I mean, I don't know. But it seems like Luisano Acuna is the main guy. But continue if you want.
No, yeah, that's really all I had to say, honestly, with Acuna. Like, I'm excited to also just give him his opportunity to get a little bit of experience in the MLB. Like you mentioned, I'm not that high on him, but, you know, at some point he's going to get a crack at the Major League roster. Why not now?
Yeah. Matt, what do you think about from like the Luis Angel Acuna standpoint? You agree with us on that?
Yeah, so obviously, like Evan mentioned, really the two guys that the only options were to bring up was Drew Gilbert and Luis Angel Acuna. And obviously, Mendy even mentioned before that they're looking at versatility and speed. And that's more of, of what in terms Luis Angel Acuna is. Now, listen, do I think he will be anything special in terms of eventually getting up here and developing? No, but I think the one part why I really like bringing him up here is because, one, when he was acquired last year, this was obviously under Billy Epler and not David Stearns. So David Stearns really has no connection to him at all in terms of emotional and trading for him. So I think in terms of him coming up, he gets an opportunity, performs. I think this could be an opportunity, especially for the Mets, to just window shop him, because if they're going to be in big next year in the offseason for, like, if they don't sign a starter and they look at the trade market to sign a starter, they could easily, look and try to up Acuna's value in terms of that. So listen, there's a lot of different options on the table, but yeah, I'd be pretty excited for him to come up here and see what he has in terms of, because he started this year at AAA pretty slow, but over the past couple of months he has started to pick it back up. So yeah, probably it will be him coming up. So let's see what he's got.
And what about you, Andrew? I know that you like to watch some of the minor league guys. Not as much Syracuse, because that's kind of like AAA is ridiculous. But are you good with something like Luis Angel Acuna? Are you looking in another direction? Because it seems like it's one position player and then one pitcher. And I actually do have like kind of a small idea of maybe one guy who could be the pitcher. Which I'll bring up in a second. But Andrew, what do you think about that possibility? Or are you just going to troll with Luke Ritter like an asshole right now?
Well, I mean, it could be, and it could be an option, but no. When you guys talked about it, like last week, you guys were talking about before Beatty got her, that you did your top five. For me, Drew Gilbert, they don't need another outfielder in this log. There's already a log jam of outfielders. When you look at Jesse Winker and Marte, Nimmo, Wader, McNeil's been getting time in the outfield. It needed to be an infield. That's why it probably would have been between Beatty and Acuna. With them saying the speed and the versatility, it's going to be Acuna. As I could troll and be like, oh, Luke Ritter provides one of those, which, again, if they want to, but with obviously Acuna already being on the 40-man, it's his to have. Again, this all could be different, and, Starling Marte or someone could pop a hammy, and then boom, it could be Drew Gilbert. But I think just because of the logjam of outfielders already on this roster, I was already like, no, like DJ Stewart, no, obviously, but like, for me, I was hell-bent it had to be an infielder, so it was either going to be Beatty and Acuna. Beatty, again, with another injury in his hand, end of the season. It's going to be Acuna, so I'm fine with it. Again, he could be that kind of Terrence Gore role and be fine, and maybe occasionally, maybe once a week getting a start. Sure, against a lefty, maybe, to get McNeil out of the lineup. Let's just play that game, but again, I'm not like, oh my god, he's not going to come up here and play every day like Ronnie Mauricio did, or when Beatty or Ventos or anybody else that got called up. If he's just here to fill that Terrence Gore role, he fits that perfectly. He can occasionally give you a start once a week. again, it's nothing crazy. You're not going to get any crazy value from a September call-up. The pitcher, maybe it's someone who's not even on this roster as of right now. So maybe that's, to be determined. So, but again, just talking strictly from the position player asset, it's Acuna, or again, if they want to give Gilbert, I mean, I don't know why they would do that. I mean, he is like red hot now. I think the last week he's hit like 4 homers in the last week, so he's getting hot too as well as Acuna. But just for that log jam in the outfield, it's got to be Acuna.
Yeah, we talked about the outfield, of course, because I had a possibility of Jackie Bradley Jr. as a possibility, calling him up because of kind of like generalizing center field. We had a lot of guys in the corners that it seems like they provide the most value, not to mention Tyrone Taylor, who is also can play center field, but hasn't really played it fairly well this year. And also in the corners with his strong arm, it's a little bit more value that way. Update from Philly, 3-run homer by Brandon Marsh to make it 4-3. So we're huge Philly fans tonight, so that's good to see. But one thing that I do want to bring up, and then we'll move on to more positive stuff as to more stressing these things out. But we talked about more high leverage types of pieces, and Frank kind of clued it in. And I saw somebody bring this up as a possibility. I don't remember who it was, but I do think, and again, even though he's off of the 40-man roster, I do think that this currently he is in the equation because he has been pitching well since he got back from injury, that being Shintaro Fujinami as a possibility to be called up. Even though it does have a lot of risk involved because he does feed into the possibility of massive walk problems. And we all know that he has the tendency to just completely lose his head. Inconsistent pitch shape, let's just say that. Lots of things bleeding over the plate, home run problem for a while. But he has been pitching well at a stretch against the AAA hitting environment, which is just so hit and miss. So, I mean, the possibility of Shintaro Fujinami, Frank, what do you think about that? Would you bend into that, or would you kind of just go like the Alex Young?
Not with Jeremy
somebody
Hefner
who's
as the
already
pitching
been here.
coach. I don't want Jeremy Hefner anywhere near him. I that kind of scares me. And I was like thinking about it too with Blake Snell. Like we talk so much about like maybe Blake Snell being an option. He had a start not that long ago. I think he walked like 6 batters in 3 innings. I'm like, could you imagine Jeremy Hefner with this guy? All of a sudden, you don't have ace Blake Snell anymore. So I think right now, like you can't go with the risk in the bullpen. I feel like with where they're at right now, we just saw what happened. Like these 2 big losses, one to San Diego, one to Arizona, due to bullpen and walking number 9 here, as I always tweet about and stuff like that. Like you just can't. I feel like they need to go with the safer bet. Like Alex Young, even if there isn't as much upside, I just feel like it's much more steady. Like I know what he's given me already. And he doesn't even have to be the guy because to me, he should be called up for Nunez. So then you have an extra spot, which is where I think you should go that long reliever route. So if you want to get one of the young guys, like if you did like Sproat or Tidwell out of long relief, like there's not that much pressure that's involved there. You know what I mean? I feel like that's just like a layup to get these kids some work, some major league reps without having to just throw them into a start or something. You know, just somebody that could provide length. I just feel like that's something they don't really have right now. We're seeing a lot of guys get DFA'd. I think one of the guys Andrew told was probably like Taylor Rogers. I was like, left in the bullpen. But I feel like you might see a starter or something kind of free up and you want to throw them in long relief. I mean, I'm really not opposed to it. I just feel like that's like the one thing that does kind of scare me because when we talk about, we used to plan for emergencies all the time with the Buck Showalter regime. Like we need to have Devin Marrero, we need to have all these guys in case of emergencies. But if a pitcher did get hurt and you had to use your entire bullpen because they got hurt and you don't have a long reliever, well, what does that do for you for the rest of the series and you don't have off days? Like because of that one injury, now you just destroyed your whole bullpen. Where if you just had a long reliever, you could have just saved everybody. So I feel like if you have an extra roster spot and there's no like marquee guy from a pitching standpoint, especially in the rotation, that you could just call up as instantly going to help you, you might as well just try to preserve your bullpen a little bit. Because even in blowouts, like how many times we've seen where the Mets score a ton of runs and still the starting pitcher only gives them 5 innings. So you still end up using a lot of your bullpen in a game where you won easily. So it's like there are these plenty of other opportunities where just having that extra arm, I feel like could just help them a lot going forward.
I think that there's a strong possibility, though, the corresponding move for Donnell Nunez is just going to be Tyler Megill because he's going to start tomorrow because he has not been put on the 26-man active, and we'll get into Tyler Megill in a little bit. But Andrew, Shintaro Fujinami, anybody else that you would add into the mix as the pitching side, because we're getting close to this September call-up, about 48 hours from it?
Yeah, I've passed the Fujinami, wanting, especially how this bullpen is pitched. I don't need another guy who, yes, has amazing stuff and can get strikeouts, which this bullpen needs, but I don't, especially down in this last month, where 1 or 2 games can end your season. I don't need him coming into a game, walking 3, and then, boom, we bring in either Maton or Reed Garrett, and he gives up a grand slam. So, again, earlier in this season, we've talked about it in the whole offseason, but him potentially being an option, but him getting injured, and now, especially now, every game means double. I'm not risking an opportunity where, he can come in and just completely implode.
Yeah, there is a strong possibility. Again, there's a lot of risk. Like I said, it's a high risk, but I think that he definitely is on the list right now. I don't know if it's going to happen. Evan, I'll go to you. Something like Shintaro Fujinami, or would you like to see somebody else that gets called up? Maybe Tyler Zuber, another guy that I haven't put out there, who they acquired at the trade deadline. I mean, third time is a charm because Stanek and Brazaban have not been good. But Evan, what do you think about the possibilities of something like Shintaro Fujinami or somebody else in this bullpen getting called up on September 1st?
Yeah, I want to build on what Frank was talking about, because now that Budo's not in that spot where he's getting the multiple innings, I feel like you have to have someone here that could eat multiple innings, whether it's putting fans won't want to hear it, but whether it's putting Megill in the bullpen or potentially relying on Christian Scott, who could come back within a week or two, maybe put him in the bullpen to eat an inning or 2 every now and then, and it takes pressure off of him as well. And I'd rather see him in a relief role right now anyway if he comes back, because I really don't want to put that much more pressure on his elbow, especially down the stretch, because right now I can't envision him being a starter if this team does make the postseason anyway. So at this point, why not just put him in the bullpen? Sean Reed Foley, maybe, if he gets back on track, maybe is an option, but I still wouldn't look there. I'd look more so towards what Frank was talking about, where you could get a guy that could eat multiple innings.
Yeah, we'll see who that would be. I mean, it probably would just end up being Megill that they would move to the bullpen, right? Like, I don't think there's like really any other.
Well,
option.
they can't do that until Blackburn is back. They need him to start.
Well, Blackburn, it seems like he's going to be back in like, what is it, 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks? Like
So that's still a few starts.
turns
I mean,
through
that's
the
still
rotation.
a couple times in the rotation. Yeah. So
It
for
is.
now, I mean, it's going to be
past
after September 1st.
by then. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But Matt, I'll go to you. Anybody else for the pitching possibility? Or do you pretty much agree on the train here?
No, I pretty much agree. And it's like, to back up what Andrew said, like, listen, I think Fujinami's a nice thing in terms of aspects, just because he's a flamethrower. He can throw hard. He can strike out guys. But we know what his problem is. It's the walks to control. And because already the fact that this bullpen already has major problems with their walks and control, I don't want to see Fujinami anywhere near this bullpen. For me, it'd be, depending on where they go, I'd go the lefty route, just because I'm a guy. I like 2 lefties in my bullpen. So if it's either Taylor Rogers they pick up from waivers, or they go Alex Young, and particularly for me, the reason why I want them to go at a lefty, whether that be Young or Rogers, is because you only have one guy in your bullpen right now, and that's Danny Young. And to be fair, Danny Young so far, like, he didn't start the season well, but ever since the second half, and even a little bit before the All-Star break, he's been pitching well that bullpen. And for me, I just don't want to put a lot of pressure on his arm, and I don't want to run his arm into the ground. So for me, from that aspect, I want to add another lefty in. So like I said, for me, it's either Alex Young or you pick up a guy like Rogers off waivers.
Yeah, I mean, Rogers is obviously a option that I feel like is going to be a hot commodity, like for the next few days, for as long as he's on waivers. I don't know if he's going to get to us. I saw Buster Olney, and again, it's Buster Olney, who said that, like, it's the Mets and the Red Sox. It seemed like the only teams that could do it, but I believe that he's like, the Mets are really the only team that really can take his money on waivers, right, Andrew? You want to add
Yeah,
to
because
that?
he's owed 11 million next year, so it's not a rental. You have to
Yeah.
pay him. He's got a guaranteed 11 million dollars. Which, when you said he doesn't get to, I think that's more likely that he could get to us. It's just the question of
Yeah.
does Stearns and Cohen want to add an $11 million reliever next year and guarantee that on the books? You know, we've seen that they've put the money on. Obviously, last year with Gott and Chris Flexen, he could easily dump this in the off, pay it down, and dump him in the offseason if he does have a bad second half. But the fact that it's not a rental like Drew Smiley would be, I think Smiley's deal next year is like really low. I think it's like 4, I think, compared to an $11 million reliever. I think that's a better shot to the Mets to get it. Again, the Red Sox could be like that. Does make kind of sense. Their bullpen's been bad. You know, I would have thought the Cubs, but then they put Drew Smiley on. So what the hell are they doing? But again, if he does get to us, it's just kind of be the game of does Cohen want to take on this extra money, and does Stearns want to pay $11 million for a reliever, which we all seen. He has that small market mentality. You know, $11 million reliever. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing that I can tell with Tyler Rogers is, yeah, so he's coming from the Giants. The one thing that I will say is that it doesn't really seem that matchup induced, let's just say, with a guy like Rogers, because it seems like he can pitch to both lefties and righties, which is something that we've really been missing all season long since Brooks Raley went down. So it would be a possibility to bring him into the bullpen. But again, that's more of just a wing and a prayer, and not compared to what they actually have actually internally. Because I don't know if he's going to actually fall to us. I hope that he does, because I think that he's a really good arm, and he can definitely deepen the back end of this bullpen, especially with how awful Stanek has been, especially with how spotty it has been with Huskar Brazaban, as to where he just has not been able to apply himself to the Miami version of him before just coming here, because that's their usual way to do it. But again, that also has to do with as well with like Frank said, trusting Phil Maton as well. I don't know if they put him in seventh inning or eighth inning role, because Daniel Nunez is going to be down once again. We were counting on him to come back. Then there was also Sean Reed Foley as a possibility. They seem to have slowed down his rehab assignment. I don't know what happens there. Bryce Montes de Oco was another guy in the equation. Now he's out of the equation with the elbow fatigue, done for the year, which most likely will be another Tommy John for him, which sucks because he's a very talented arm. Tony coming in saying that the World Series, maybe it's back on. Our Mets Weekly alum. Good to see you in here, Tony. But, I mean, we'll see how they kind of want to sort out this bullpen a little bit, because, again, it has been a point of emphasis out throughout the entire year. There's also a possibility that you see a rehabbing Grant Hartwig, because he's still on the 40-man roster. You also have Matt Gage, who is a possibility. He's on the 40-man roster. Tyler Zuber, like I said. Eric Orzi is still on the 40-man, which I thought he was DFA'd, or maybe been somebody else. So they do have a lot of relievers on the 40-man right now that could expand the roster, but nothing that really dances off the page as compared to somebody like Rogers, who is available on waivers, which, I mean, again, I hope that they get him, but I'm not putting my hopes up. Again, it's the waiver wire, so whoever's lap it he lands in, he will go there. And but the Mets do have the advantage there, where he's making $11 million or $12 million, something like that, where they can actually afford that on their payroll, as compared to Boston, who has been very selective, and then to all these other teams that are competing, but they don't want to pay $10 million to a reliever, which is smart, but the Mets have that flexibility to do that if they want to. Anything else you guys want to add on the possibility of the bullpen, Frank, Andrew?
Yeah, I feel like with Rogers, I mean, Stearns has experience with him in Milwaukee. So, I mean, it's a guy that he has prioritized before. And I feel like one of the things that kind of really goes unnoticed because it happened so long ago is like when Brooks Raley went down, like that was a huge loss for the Mets. And it just kind of stinks that, it's not something where it's like, oh, well, because the guy's hurt, you can have him another year. It's like, no, the contract still does run out. So I feel like it's not technically the worst thing in the world to go into next year having Rodgers on your roster. I do wish that was a club option, because then it could be something like, all right, we could try it the first few months, see if it's a fit with our regime. If it's not, we could just say no and don't have him next year. But I feel like going into next year, knowing you have a lefty reliever and Rodgers, even though it hasn't been as good as he was, having another guy that has closing experience, I feel like is something this Mets team could use, especially if we do want to start to use Edwin Diaz in the eighth inning more often, or like I said, again, just those times when if he doesn't have it, it's like, okay, well, who else could we go to in the ninth inning that's been there before? And even if Rodgers is obviously not a lockdown, I just feel like it's just another option to have, which really is kind of what you need. I feel like we always say that you can never have enough arms. Especially, it's like, okay, well, now Nunez is down again, and you can't really take chances. And I feel like, when you are in a situation like we said, when you're behind, and if you want to take any risks, it's like, why not add another arm? Because it still just kind of amazes me that the Mets have gone through so many guys this season. I mean, we talk about it all the time, but like, look at the opening day roster, look who was in that bullpen and who's remaining. And the fact that one of the guys still remaining is Adam Ottavino, like with all the guys that the Mets have shipped out of here and said no, he stays around. And again, I just don't think he's the most valuable roster. I already talked about that already, but again, I just don't see that much value right now. I just feel like there's a lot of other options they could go to.
One thing I will say about Rodgers, he does not walk anyone, so you know what that means.
Not yet.
Hefner's
Not yet. Hefner's licking his chops on that one. All right. Well, another possibility again. Stephen coming in saying Joey Lucchesi up for bullpen depth. Now, here's the thing with Lucchesi. I think that he's just completely been tossed out of the equation. I think the Mets were hoping that somebody took him off waivers, to be honest, because he's a free agent after this year, and I just don't see him being put into that equation. Again, he's kind of in the same boat as Shintaro Fujinami right now, where they're off of the 40-man roster. They were both DFA'd. So, I mean, I would not bring up somebody like Joey Lucchesi just for the sake of he throws with his left hand. Like, because a guy like Danny Young, he's actually been good for us. He actually has good stuff. He's been able to apply it, and he's actually been a solid lefty out of the bullpen for us. So, I mean, that's something that you actually can apply. But when you bring in like these ridiculous lefties who have no business being here, and they have not had like any track record of doing anything recently with how spotty relievers are, I mean, there's no reason to have them here just because they just throw with their left hand, which I think is just ridiculous. And M. Easy asking about Fujinami if he's still struggling in the minors. He's been good recently. Again, it's a grain of salt thing, how you can look at it, because relievers just have stretches like these all the time. But speaking of stretches, speaking of campaigns, let's talk about Francisco Lindor. Everybody's sunshine of their life right now, because where would we be without Francisco Lindor? And speaking of where would we be, let's talk about his MVP campaign that he has been having for quite a while. He did start off pretty slow, but recently he's been putting up these MVP types of numbers, not just at the plate, and from the leadoff spot, of course, but also just all around every single side of the ball. Now, we all know that his main competition, Shohei Ohtani, on pace for a historic 50-50 season. Lindor does have the case for MVP, and I think that we could make it here. Even though we know it's probably going to go into a direction of Shohei Ohtani, let's look at Lindor's case for the crown. Now, this year, he's pretty much in the top 10 in a lot of these power categories, from shortstops and National League ranks. And not to mention the overall league percentiles that he's in from batted ball data. Ex-WOBA, something like we like to talk about a lot with quality of contact, just the best of his entire career. Expected slugging, expected batting average, whatever you want to look at. Of course, the elite defender that he is, and such a great base runner as well, just providing all 5 tools. Now, the main thing that you can bring up is, of course, Shohei Ohtani being the generational talent that he is, but he is a designated hitter. And we've talked about the Mets, the Hank Aaron Award as pretty much something that gets subbed in from like the best hitter of the season. But of course, I feel like it's probably going to be weighted towards Shohei Ohtani a lot more than a lot of Mets fans would want. Not Frank, excuse me, Andrew, because Frank is not here. He disappeared. Andrew, I'll go to you. Francisco Lindor's MVP case, what he's been doing on the field. I mean, we would not be in this position without Francisco Lindor. And this is a pretty rough position we're in right now, but imagine if we did not have this guy active on our roster, if we just didn't have him here whatsoever. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, again, especially keeping into consideration the god-awful April and half of May that he had, then he's, again, F4 leader, battling Ohtani in F4, obviously leading all shortstops in F4. It's amazing. Will he have the same fate as the shortstop on the hat that I am wearing? Yeah, because, of course, Shohei Ohtani exists in the National League, and then Aaron Judge decides to just be the unsung hero. If this was basketball, I think he would have a better shot because of the narrative. If Francisco Lindor continues this great pace, and let's say the Mets find a way to sneak into the playoffs, you could say the perspective of the Mets did not belong, or did the general perception going into this season, they would have been god-awful, they were going to be bad, not a playoff team, and Lindor carries them to the playoffs, goes on an absolute rage in September, and he wins it. I think if he can do that and have an amazing September, I think it's a lot closer because, again, we make the, Stephen A. Smith got into a lot of hot water, but who's batting, especially in the Mets lineup right now? Pete Alonso's been dog shit this year. Brandon Nemo's been up and down. It's kind of been him by himself all year being the only productive player in this lineup. We're like, there were stretches where Mark Vientos was good, but he was never hitting behind Lindor. He's not had the protection. It's kind of the same conversation we've had with Alonso the last couple of years. Nemo's had his stretches, obviously. But again, him doing it on all sides of the ball, again, against Ohtani, just being an absolute masher at the plate, and him not pitching, this would kind of be the year if someone were to beat Shohei Ohtani for the MVP with him not pitching. But again, the Mets are a below average, a below 500 team if you don't have this guy. Leadership quality, again, half the fan base hates him because there's a number next to his name in the checkbook, but for some reason, he still, at the end of the year, is a top 3 shortstop in the game. He doesn't get the respect from this home fan base, and fan voting and all that. But again, you take him off this team, and let's say just throw Paul DeYoung as just a league average hitter. I'd like to see where this team would be if you didn't put you put a league average hitter or a league average player in Francisco Lindor's position. But again, he's got a shot. Again, you saw the passing article, so there is some buzz in the MLB, not just New York media, but overall baseball media. You've seen some people bring this up. If he has another, like how Bobby Witt Jr. had in August or July in September, I think he can be legit conversation and not just be Ohtani running away with it, and especially getting the Mets into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that there's like kind of a wall that's kind of separating like the MVP to the MVP runner-up right now. Obviously, with Judge being as good as he is, but Bobby Witt has also had a really good season. And then on the other side, you also have Shohei Ohtani with Francisco Lindor, Ketel Marte, who kind of like knocked himself out a little bit, who got hurt. I think that there's a case here again, but I probably think it's going to just aim towards Ohtani. I would still give it to Ohtani, and I'll get into that as to why. But Matt, I'll go to you. What do you think about his case for the MVP? I mean, just overall what he's been for the Mets. I mean, again, in terms of just overall value, I mean, the Mets need Lindor a lot more than the Dodgers need Ohtani. I think we all can agree on that.
I mean, he's been incredible. And look, this is a guy who, I certainly criticized at the beginning of the year. And look, he did deserve criticism because not only was he playing bad, but he was playing like an ungodly level of bad that he could not play at the level just because he's making the type of money. But look, ever since Mendy moved him to the leadoff spot, he's just been a different guy. And I mean, you take a look at the stats, right? And this is not factoring today's game, but off of Fangraphs. But ever since the All-Star break, this is a guy who's batting .309 with a .908 OPS and a 160 WRC plus. He's been amazing. And look, I think he is going to get a bit unlucky because, Ohtani will ultimately win the MVP. And like Andrew mentioned, or I forgot which one of you guys mentioned, but if this was more in terms of like similar to the NBA, I think he would have gotten a better shot winning the MVP just because, listen, if the Mets don't have Francisco Lindor this year, then they are nowhere near the playoffs right now. They are probably a bottom level team right now. But look, this is a guy that plays every day. He hits for power. He steals. he does everything that needs to be done from a leader. And the one thing that I really loved from him was, you brought up the Passion article, and what I really love from that quote in that Passion article and where he said, my job is not done until we win a World Series and until I give that trophy to Stephen Alex Cohen. And I love that quote. But the quote I really loved under it was, but even if we win a championship here in New York, no one's going to remember that because we have to do it again next year. And that's what I love, because as a leader, you have to set the mentality. You have to set that, like I said, you got to set the mentality. And that's what I'm loving from him. And I think for me next year, and especially Mets fans really have to start pushing for this offseason. I think there's a serious debate that needs to be had about naming Francisco Lindor the captain of the New York Mets next year.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that when you take away what he starts with every single year, because we already know how slow he usually starts, like this is the usual thing. April Lindor, we have these conversations every single year. Is it possible that maybe he starts next season in April in the leadoff spot and then we're not having that type of conversation? Maybe that is probably just what he needed to be, not batting second or batting third. Maybe he just needed to be the leadoff hitter, and then he would be able to be this MVP caliber type of player throughout the entirety of the season, and you can kind of forget about the April Lindor. But that has yet to be seen. Evan, I'll go to you. What do you think about the possibility of Lindor being the MVP? Of course, his play on the field it pretty much it speaks for itself every single day. And speaking of play on the field right now, the Phillies took the lead over the Braves with a Nick Castellanos home run. So again, let's go Phillies. But Evan, what do you think about Lindor just in general, of just if he has a case here for MVP? What do you think?
I think in the graphic, you forgot to include part hitting coach and part pitching coach, part infield coach too, because Frank, I heard you mentioning it on the last episode, how Chavez, a multi-gold glove winner, but we're always hearing about how Lindor is teaching Vientos defense. Anytime there's a mound visit, it's always him and Alvarez going out there and calming the pitcher down. And it's not a coincidence that once they moved Lindor to the leadoff spot and once he started heating up, the team itself started to win baseball games and started to emerge themselves. And like Matt was saying before, he's leading by example. Like, I forgot if it was the first or second game, but Jeff McNeil out of the box, running down to first base. He ends up being safe on the play instead of it being a double play. And I believe the Mets ended up scoring that inning. And that's something that Lindor has done a lot this year. And it's, again, just that leading by example where you got to play your ass off if you want to stay in the lineup here. And it's just the mentality. He brought the locker room together in general with that players only meeting earlier in the year where they did turn things around as well. So you could look at a lot of things. I ultimately think it will go to Ohtani because it just is what it is. He's doing something that's never been done before. So it's going to be that. I still feel there should be, like with the NHL, what they have the Ted Lindsay and the Hart Trophy, where there should be like a best player and then an MVP, because the MVP should be most valuable player, which is by definition what Lindor is. Because what Ohtani's doing is great, but let's be honest here, the Dodgers are still a first place team without him being there. I mean, they were for the past few seasons, and we've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers keep adding to their lineup, and of course, even though the Dodgers are a top-heavy team as of right now, because like the bottom of their lineup has been terrible. We all know that they still would be good with Mookie Betts there and Freddie Freeman there and all these other pieces that are there. Because we all know that every time that the Dodgers bring in a big piece, we all know, well, they don't need him, but they want him. Frank, I know you've been the most vocal with Francisco Lindor of his MVP case as compared to Shohei Ohtani. Do you still feel the same way? Do you feel like it's they continue to push it?
Definitely.
Or did it die down?
Yeah, I mean, I think here's kind of the ribbon on all of it. When things were going really bad for the Mets and Lindor holds the players' meeting, and all of a sudden that's where things really start to change as well, just overall from a team standpoint, from just a culture standpoint. And you saw the changes right away along with moving to leadoff spot. Ohtani doesn't do that for the Dodgers. No other player really does that for their team. Maybe, I mean, Judge, he really leads the Yankees. I've seen him all the time. He's talking to Stroman. He's talking to a bunch of guys on his side as well. But it's like Lindor, there's no stats for that. And I think that's the thing that's really frustrating because, like, if there was a stat that showed, okay, what about, like, the mental aspect of, like, coaching your other infielders, helping with your pitchers and all your guys. If there was a stat for that, Lindor would be, like, way above everybody else in the National League. But it's just like, oh, well, we like the home runs and we like the stolen bases and things like that. But again, it's like we said with the Dodgers. I feel like if Mookie was healthy, let's just say for example, the Dodgers would have like an insane record, and like all the pitching guys that they had. It's like we talked about. It's like the Dodgers, they had basically more than a rotation worth of injuries, and the expectation was that they were going to win over 100 games before Ohtani got there, and then once he got there, it's like, okay, now way over 100 games. Meanwhile, it's like with the Mets, it's like, okay, well, we'll be competitive. We'll be a little bit above 500. But without Lindor, this team is a disaster. And the guy plays every single day. It's like, and he has to answer to the media every single day, win or loss. And I think like we're talking about those qualities of being a captain. If Alonso does walk, definitely. For sure. Even if Alonso's here, like you just see it with Lindor, he's just much more vocal on the field. Alonso's just not saying much. And there have been legit times where, especially with the Brosnan thing in San Diego, where Lindor goes to the mound and he's the one talking and Hefner is nodding. Like, he is legitimately the one coaching the players. And like we said, we talk about WAR. Like, that's the thing. Like, he just does so many different things on the field. It's like, you need the big hit. You need the stolen base. You need the big play in the field. Like, he'll do all of them. Like, what do you need to do to win the game? It's like, that's where he shows up. So, I love what he's done. And like Andrew said, I hope he does have a big September and just kind of really seal it up because I feel like once you put the numbers together, I don't know. It's tough. Like I've said, I always go by this. Like, it's not the who had the best regular season numbers or what. It's not what it should be. If they should change the name of it. Because it's called most valuable player. And when we talk about sheer value, nobody tops him.
Yeah, listen, I agree with a lot of what Mets fans say about, Francisco Lindor because he has been, from all aspects, just playing his ass off, whether it is transferring it from another player, from him, or he's just leading by example. He really has become the leadoff hitter, leading by example. No pun intended there. But I'm just saying that the fact that Francisco Lindor has really just come to another level, and it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down at any point. Like I said, bringing up the numbers of whether you're talking about it from expected numbers or just the overall batted ball data that he has. This is some of the best of his career, and it's been going on that, full-on stretch as to where, it was okay at the beginning, and then he continues to go into his 30s, still hitting like this, and it's been really impressive. But just overall, what he's been able to do from all five tools, it's really impressive. That's what you want from a franchise player. That's what you get from a guy like Mookie Betts. That's what you get from a lot of other pieces around the league. And that's what builds franchise players. They're not just guys who have one good hitting season and then they don't do anything else. They are guys who help you win from all aspects. Now, when I say this, I don't mean it to be mean to any Mets fans. I don't mean it to start a war. Maybe I do. I don't mean it to start any battle here, but I think it's true. I think it's a good analogy. And I guess it's a little bit negative, but I'm just going to say the way that Mets fans are talking about Francisco Lindor, it kind of reminds me about like looking back on career-wise of how like Yankee fans kind of talk about Derek Jeter and how they're kind of talking about him with this MVP race as to where and Frank just gave me the example of it and no disrespect there, I'm just saying, but here's how I look at it. When you talk to a Yankee fan and you call Derek Jeter overrated, like we all have at one point, you always get that same argument from Yankee fans, and this is what I kind of am hearing from Mets fans as to where, how do you measure grit? How do you measure jumping into the stands? How do you measure these postseason moments? That's the type of feeling that I've been getting from a lot of Mets fans. And I don't think they realize what they're bringing, because a lot of Mets fans, not even Red Sox fans, but a lot of Mets fans are the ones that have kind of turned on this Derek Jeter being overrated. Whether you believe it or not, we always hear that type of argument as to where Derek Jeter, for 20 years, he's come through in the postseason. And I feel like when you talk about that, it just has no value to these baseball writers. Like, baseball writers, they're not going to look at it. They're going to look at the numbers overall. They're going to look at Shohei Ohtani, who is this main stage attraction. And he 100%, I believe that he deserves it. I would still give it to Shohei Ohtani personally, because of what he's doing offensively. It just waits out pretty much anybody that's doing anything in the National League. But I think that the whole thing with Lindor is, to me, it's more of just like he's the Mets fans' MVP. But to everybody else, they're not really seeing what he is doing day in and day out, which is kind of unfortunate, because most baseball fans focus on their own team, or they don't focus on baseball at all because of just how MLB promotes it. But the way that I look at it from the Lindor standpoint is, I think that he's, if you want to just talk about awards, I think that you're going to get another Silver Slugger from him, because I don't think anybody else, maybe Ellie De La Cruz might be in that conversation, but anybody else, no, I don't think so. It is kind of weird to see him not get an all-star selection and then be in an MVP conversation, which is, it is kind of funny, because I don't think any like non-all-star has ever won the MVP in the same year. I don't know if that is a thing. Somebody has to fact check that for me. But I think the way that Mets fans are looking at it is what he has done for this team, and I think that it definitely needs to be put on full blast as compared to, what Mets fans were saying about him when he was not playing well. And I hope that Mets fans do remember this, of how he has been playing, because eventually he's going to turn out a good year. Yes, the first year here was rough, but again, that was like, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? I mean, we've moved on since then. Hopefully he doesn't have a crappy April again, so maybe you do see him in the All-Star game, but awards are awards, and like Matt said, with him talking about this team just winning overall, that's what's the most important stat, or the most important number, the most important award. The only thing we care about is the hardware. And like I said at the beginning, talking about, with the Rangers, we fall short every time in the Eastern Conference Finals every year. The only thing that matters is the cup. That's all we care about. So any other team that gets eliminated before then, no one cares about
the type of fan you are.
Yeah, exactly. And, some people like to say, oh, they're proud of their team from this, but no, I just want to win. And that's literally what I want. And that's the main reason as to why maybe Frank and Andrew, we all three of us kind of just put to the side that 2022 year where they won 101 games. But hey, at the end, they didn't win. I mean,
and they didn't follow it up the next year. That's the thing, that they were awful the very next year. So you didn't win anything, and then you didn't even build on it. So it feels like it didn't happen. Honestly, I mean, it feels like far removed, because I mean, look what we're talking about. We're talking about like, oh, can we just get over 500 and stay over 500? Like, could we do that compared to winning over 100 games? Like, it's a totally different team just in every aspect. Like we said, there's a few position players that are held over, but other than that, like it's a different team.
Yeah, I've talked about this before. We've talked about it all the time, with Alonso being the one where wherever the offense goes, it's all goes through Alonso. It's a lot different from the sense of Lindor carrying the offense, or going where the offense goes with Lindor, because of what he provides on every single side of the ball from all five tools, as compared to Pete Alonso carrying the offense. No disrespect to him of what he's been able to do, for the previous 5 years of what he's done in the lineup with, next to no protection. Now he does have that protection as to where the lineup is deeper, but with, Alonso, he's only carrying us offensively. Francisco Lindor has just been carrying the load, like, from all five tools. And I think that that's the one thing that a lot of people need to look at, as to compared to their hometown sweetheart in Pete Alonso, who has not been playing to the expectation that we want in a contract year, as compared to Francisco Lindor, who is having a career year, and he's just been doing it from all aspects. And that's the main reason as to why the Mets have put themselves in such a position to, where I mean, he's the leadoff hitter now. He's starting everything off now. And I mean, I do wonder if they started this season on opening day with Lindor leading off, would they be in a different position? Because it seems like all these wins and losses have gone through Lindor this year, or compared to the starters not collapsing before the 5th inning ends. So with Lindor, I want to see him in the leadoff spot for the rest of his career. I feel like that's the best way to get the best out of him. And hopefully we see, them get to the playoffs this year. And it's going to have to be with Francisco Lindor carrying the load. And I think that they've definitely put him in that position where he can do that. And he looks like that player in Cleveland that we gave $341 million, whatever you want to say, when we give the overall complaints about him, because he is getting paid a lot of money. Like Matt said earlier, the criticism was definitely fair. It was fair because he was not contributing on a team that he's supposed to be contributing on at a very high level. And we'll see. And then again, there's also this point from Megill as well, who's always hard on Alonso. He's known to do this. They'd be in a better position if Alonso would have stepped up. And that would be nice to see. He did do a little bit better in this series, but we're still just not getting that level of production that we know we can get from Pete Alonso. Anything else you guys want to add with Lindor or anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna say one thing. Like, building off my point in terms of him setting the mentality and the mindset of a winning team, this is a guy who's coming in now, and like going back to that quote of saying, look, my job's not done until we win a World Series here. He's setting that mindset of, look, every time you put on this uniform right here, you're playing for the Mets. There's expectations now. You have to win. And that's big in terms of, look, especially for free agents coming in, because look, everybody knows most of the times in terms of free agents, the one thing they're looking for mostly is to get paid, because at the end of the day, money talks, bullshit walks, as people love to say. But let's not pretend that other players from outside the organization are also look at the fact like, yo, can I actually come to this organization? Can I win here? And now if you're starting to see this mindset and the mentality change, because look, I think it's been pretty well known that other players around the league have seen the Mets as a laughing stock over the past 2 decades. And listen, fair credit, because this team and this franchise has had a lot of LOL moments. But if now other superstars and other good players from the outside the organization are looking at this team, and it's like, okay, like I have an owner here who wants to win. He's going to spend whatever it takes to win. I have a president of baseball operations who actually knows what he's doing. And I have a guy in Francisco Lindor who's a leader, and he's most likely going to be runner-up to the National League MVP. It's like, okay, I'm coming into a stable organization, a stable franchise, and I actually feel like I have a solid chance to win here. So I think Lindor, setting the mindset, setting the tone, putting up these numbers, I think it's only given the Mets a better shot at landing big-time free agents, and maybe not as big of a price as we've seen like in 2022 before that season where they had to overpay for Max Scherzer. So like I said, like as long as this foundation is getting set, it's only going to help the Mets in later years in terms of landing those big guys.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about pillars in the organization all the time. I mean, Steve Cohen has been that for the past the 5th year, 4 years. I don't know. He was here as long as Lindor, 4 years. And then we talk about the pillar of David Stearns coming in, who was the main guy that he had his eye on for years. And then you have Francisco Lindor, who seems to be the top of the list as to where he most likely will be. I hope that he is named the captain. I hope he is, because that has basically been his role this year. It has been his role since, I guess, his 2nd year here. It didn't go well in the 1st year. Even though I totally supported what he did in that dugout, but we won't get into that. Sorry. But the one thing that I will say is, the overall impact that you've had from him, it's definitely come from a next level, because we've definitely seen him kind of float around with, maybe there's empty stats here and there, or maybe he's stat padding. I know a lot of people on Twitter like to go after him on that. Talked about, him coming through when it matters. I think that's what he's been able to do. It took a little bit longer than you wanted it to, in terms of him being here for like his 4th year, but at the rate that he is going, you hope that it continues. But with how Lindor has kind of carried himself, and I really think that he's learned a lot going into New York as compared to what it was the first year, because the first year was rough. We do remember his first year here. There was a lot of just him underperforming, as well as compared to some stuff in the locker room as well, and then him just talking about not liking getting booed. Now he's kind of embraced it in the fact as to where he expects, if he does not perform well, he's going to get booed, he's going to get ridiculed, it's going to happen. And now he's just been able to kind of just like use that as the full-on foundation to just keep going. And hopefully he's just, again, like we've talked about, the leadership of how he has just brought in, Andrew, I'm going to say it, just brought in the culture of just a full-on mindset as to where the team can just, he can lead by example. And that's what we've seen from him this year. And it's good to see from him, from your $341 million player. Now, Frank, I'll go to you. You're raising your
Yeah, I just
hand.
want to add like a random, just overall question, just yes or no. If Buck Showalter was the manager, do you think that the Mets would have had this OMG craze where everybody dancing and singing in the dugout?
No.
Not at all.
I don't think he would. I mean, I think it probably still would happen because the Mets are so crazy in that way and they just do that stupid stuff. But I don't think he would be aware of it going on. You know what I mean? Like
it wouldn't be so like on the field, like you could like clearly see like everything happening.
No, knowing Buck Showalter, somebody hits a home run, they play the "Oh my God," and he's like, "Oh, what's this little ditty?"
They wouldn't have the sign at the very least.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think like to some extent like if we talk about like from a culture standpoint, I think Mendoza deserves some credit too. Is like being a player's manager and just being just like kind of letting the guys do what they do and then like stepping in as needed, like more like a hands-off approach to some extent. And I feel like that could be what helped them get out of it. As far as like having the players meeting, just like you see like the the guys get along, whatever. But like again, I just think a lot of times like with a rookie manager, it's easy to just give up when you're that far out of it.
Yeah.
We had the graphic earlier in the year where they're like almost 10 games out of it, they're all the way at the bottom. Like, see, but you know what? It's not our year. We stink. Pack it up. Let's not be the White Sox, but forget it. But no, I mean, this team has continued to fight even as times we got tough. Like we said, like this week itself, you had the brutal San Diego loss. You win the next day. The next game because the off day, but you lose at Brew against Arizona, you win the next day. You know what I mean? Like it's just that kind of toughness, so to speak, that the team never truly gives up. I mean, we've seen plenty of comebacks as well. You know what I mean? Like I just, especially when they were going good, like you felt like they were in any game, regardless of what the score was. So I think like Lindor deserves credit, but I think people want to blame Mendoza for certain things as rookie manager. But I think overall, like there are some changes that I do see just from overall a team standpoint that may not show up in a stat, but I think just overall the feel of the team I do find is different as well.
Yeah, what I really do like about, with like one thing that I really do like about like managers or coaches or however you like to put it, one thing I really do like to point out is if they are tough when they need to be. And he has been tough when he's needed to be, and he's also been lenient when he needs to be. As breaking news coming in, it looks like the Phillies just won, so the Mets gain a game today. We live another day, folks.
Change the graphic. Change it.
So,
Change the graphic.
Oh shit, that's right, I have to. But the one thing that I will say, just the overall leadership, yes, there is some questionable moves that are made. There are some questionable transactions. There are some questionable where they just start to lose it. And when, in terms of just actually starting to lose it, we've seen them spiral a lot. Like we've talked about with the offense or overall the defense, which is we've talked about run prevention a lot, but they haven't been amazing at the run prevention. Let's just say they've gotten better as the season has gone around, but I think that we've seen the Mets tailspin a lot this year, and there has been a lot of points where they could have just given up. We know that there was a lot of Mets teams that probably could have just laid down and died. And again, that was let's just say that was a heart-wrenching.
They died last year.
I was gonna say
They
even
did
last
die
year,
last
Like the end of May, I'm pretty sure they had basically
all
the
the
same record.
Veterans and leaders.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like end of May this year was very similar to the end of May last year as far as just pure record.
But Buck's
Yeah,
an
exactly.
experienced guy and knows how to control the room.
No, actually, they were up because I remember because I went to that June 1st game when they swept the Phillies and Scherzer was on the mound. And after that game on June 1st, they were 30-27. And then was the next two series where they got swept by the Blue Jays and swept by the Braves, and it just
Yeah.
tailspin from that point.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they had like these moments, and we talked about it in 2019. Let's not forget the 10-4 against the Nationals. That was like that moment where we're like, okay, yeah, this is done. We're done. We're finished. Not everybody knew it at the point, but you always point back to that game as to where, like, yeah, this is where it starts to tailspin. This year, they've had a lot, and I mean a lot of heartbreaking losses, similar to, like I've said, living in 2019, where you had a lot of these heartbreaking losses, and it never seems like they could really come back and win from them. But they have been able to fight back, and that goes to a lot of the leadership in the clubhouse as compared to somebody like Carlos Mendoza, or when you're talking about somebody like Mickey Callaway, who has absolutely no feel for the game whatsoever. And I've talked about this before. There's a difference between a first-time manager and a rookie manager. First-time manager is actually brought up in the role and actually has leadership experience. A rookie manager is a Luis Rojas, who has absolutely no experience with actually being a leader, and was just a quality control coach. And then there was Mickey Callaway, who was a pitching coach, and
Had a feel for the wrong things.
Yeah, exactly. It was just they brought in, these pieces, like that really did not expect to be that good, and they weren't good. Surprise, surprise. Let's just say that. But I think when you look at it as a whole, Mendoza is someone who David Stearns likes a lot. He hired him, for God's sake. And you really do see that leadership really translate, and, as to where, there's never been a lot of situations where he's showing up his players in public, shall we say. We've seen we got two Rangers fans here. We've seen the Rangers do that a lot. As to where, they're just automatic leaders as to where they have their players' backs no matter what, and they address it internally. Those are the things that we have seen from something like Carlos Mendoza. We saw that situation with Jorge Lopez as well, things like that, and things that were going on in the clubhouse that they needed to fix immediately. Previous regimes, I don't think that would have been executed the same way.
What I love too is I always go back to this, is that when the Diaz suspension happened, Mendoza was like, he didn't throw Diaz under the bus publicly. Like when they had the press conference and everything, he was very like neutral, said the right stuff. But we had heard behind the scenes that he was very angry and like not okay with what was going on. So I like that. I because it's such a bad look when you see like what happened. Like you want to talk about the example of a well-run organization, not well-run organization. Remember the whole thing earlier when Ron Washington just like totally threw Luis Guillorme under the bus for like something that happened with the Angels or whatever.
Or what was
like,
it, the Tony La Russa with Yerman Mercedes?
Yes, yeah, La Russa, he had stuff like that too. So like you wouldn't see something like that from Mendoza. Like he always says positive stuff because unfortunately, like I watched the post games too many times, but like he always has positive stuff to say. Like, and they try to bait him too, especially in New York. They're like, "Oh, well, what do you think about so and so just walking this many guys and not coming through?" And like he never has a bad thing to say. Like he always says positive things. He always says, "I believe in these guys." Like when Diekman, especially. How many times did he defend Diekman publicly when we all knew that like this guy stinks? But he never said like, "Oh, well, he's struggling." Like he's like, "Oh, he's gonna get through it. I have confidence." But like he always says the right things. But then, like I always say, when I see how he avoids using certain pitches, I'm like, okay, I know how he really feels. Because he's been complimentary of these guys in the press conferences, but when it comes to a big spot, am I going to use them? Nope. So it's like his actions speak louder than his words, but he still publicly is saying all the right things and positive things about the team.
Yeah, that's one thing you can say about like Mendoza. He definitely is PR trained as compared to like, some of these other managers that we
went out there and battled
things. Yeah, exactly. Like not just putting out like those cliches overall. Just he said what we have, not what we wanted to hear, what we've needed to hear. And I think that that's one thing that is put on blast a lot in New York as to where things just get put out of context. Yes, he said some stuff where you're like, okay, why are we doing this here? Why are we saying this at this current point? Yes, but it never has really been put on the full blast as to where, something like Mickey Callaway just like out of context saying, talking about dry humping guys, or what was the other thing that Luis Rojas just like talking about? The full thing. What was it, the raccoon thing where he's just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I didn't even know that was happening. What? Like, you're the fucking manager, dude. Like that, you're supposed to know. Like, you're supposed to know what's going on in the clubhouse. And he always seems to have Mendoza, whether it's him just saying a white lie or something as to what he trusts or what he doesn't, he's always been able to be direct. Not to mention that also is translated to Francisco Lindor as well. He takes the media head on every single day, whether they win or they lose. And maybe you couldn't have said that about something like Francisco Lindor with his leadership in the first year, where, he took on a lot. Let's say he may have thought that he bit off a little bit more than he could chew signing that contract. But he's played here for a while, and he knows how it is now. And now I want to transition into another guy who's been here for a while, but has been a lot of ups and downs, most of downs. He is going to be returning to the rotation tomorrow against the White Sox, with Paul Blackburn going to the injured list. Let's talk about a man named Tylor Megill, which has been a piece of topic for a while, mainly because of me. But one thing that I will say is that before I even get into anything, Megill has been handed a silver platter right here, let's just say, because he is facing a White Sox team that is mathematically probably the worst team we've ever seen in the modern era of baseball. Now, where Tylor Megill kind of left things off, obviously the Mets, going back to the well here. He's still going to be here. What Tylor Megill has been able to do has been getting strikeouts, still walking a lot of batters when he was here. Pretty much the entirety of the Mets' entire pitching staff, let's say. Lots of swing and miss, maybe a little bit of shitty luck, but he has definitely put himself into the position as to where he has really pitched himself out of the major leagues. And the Mets' injuries are kind of putting him back into this equation as to where he's the only one with actual starting experience in AAA. Of course, you can see the overall, all the adjustments that he has made in terms of just the pitch arsenal. Let's just say, an eight pitch deep arsenal now. He's made all of these adjustments, and for some reason, he just has not been able to apply it whatsoever. And I think that this is a full-on opportunity right now for Tylor Megill, and it's a big start. I feel like we talk about this all the time. This is his time to prove himself, but this is a White Sox team that sucks actual balls. Like, I'm not even joking how bad the White Sox are. If you look at them statistically, if you look at them just from your eye test, from the old eye test, they stink. They're terrible. They're awful. So all I can say right now, and I'll put it, on the round table here, but what I'm going to say to get everybody started is, if he doesn't get you a quality start against the White Sox tomorrow, he doesn't belong in the major leagues. And he probably never will. Frank, I'll go to you. The confidence in Tylor Megill. Actually, first of all, before I ask you guys, we have a poll that ran into the chat first, asking, do you trust Megill against the White Sox? And in parentheses, I put one of the worst teams in baseball history, because they are. 47% of you guys, only 47% are saying yes. 31% are saying no. 22% are 50-50. So it's pretty balanced. Let's just say that. That's how unreliable Tylor Megill has been recently. Frank, going into this start, adding him into the rotation, most likely we'll have a few turns through the rotation at the rate that we're going with Blackburn. I don't know how many times we can discuss this, but the current situation that he's in, what do you think about it?
Yeah, the Mets literally, they're giving him a golden opportunity here. It should be a layup, honestly, because the other thing, too, about, how bad the White Sox have been, is it crazy to say that it feels like they're getting worse? Because I feel like as the days go on, they're more and more on a pace of, one of the worst seasons, not just modern, like baseball history. Like they're on that trajectory.
From every
because
aspect, yes.
They just continue to lose. So it's not like, oh, well, you know what, they're playing bad, but it looks like they're starting to put it. Like, no, they might be getting even worse. So you can't tell me that they're trying to win. Like, I don't know what's going on over there. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like if you're tanking in sports, like, I get that. But when you're when you're so far in the tank, like you're all the way in the bottom of the tank, like you could win some games. Like it's okay. It's not going to hurt your draft picks. Like don't worry about it. But I feel like does anyone have any pride? Like, do you want to go down as being part of one of the worst teams in the history of a really long sport? I mean, it's just crazy to me because I look at that roster and, like, I still see Luis Robert, who, by all accounts, like, used to be a good player. And, like, Andrew Benintendi, who used to be a good player. And, like, they still have Gavin Sheets and Andrew Vaughn. Like, these are guys that have had major league success. Not a bunch of just guys you never heard of. I mean, there are some on the bottom half of the order. But I just feel like they're putting you in a spot where, like, okay, here's a team that is just so awful. Just, and like you said, Carson, just have a quality start. We're not asking for a shutout. We're not asking 7 innings. Just don't get killed. Just get us like through maybe 6 at less than 2 runs. Like, can you do that? You know, like it's just like such an easy opportunity for him. But what really is just frustrating is that because of the Blackburn injury and the Senga injury and the Scott injury, and we can't trust any of our young guys. Let's say the start goes awful for him. Like he gets bombed and it's just terrible. He's still making the next start because of the lack of depth that they have. And that's kind of crazy. You know what I mean? It's kind of crazy that like they're in that kind of situation where even if he does bad, it doesn't even matter because they're still just going to use him anyway. But I feel like not even for the Mets' sake, but like you said, I think for his sake, he needs to start, man. Like he needs to have himself a quality start. But I think that there is a chance where he could go to a Milwaukee and have success. I mean, I don't think, like, I mean, you've said, like, there still is some stuff there.
He will. There's no,
I mean,
will.
there still is that possibility. But I just think overall, like, he has to. You know what I mean? Like, he can't blow this. One stat I was looking at that's kind of interesting is that he's been having a bad season, but he's been, like, really terrible on the road. So this is a road start, so that's...
Yeah.
You never know. You know what I mean? And again, it's like we've talked about. It's like the Mets are a team that would lose a series to Oakland, but then be the only team that could win a series in Arizona. So it's like the fact that they're playing Chicago. It's like it really could. It could go either way.
Could it be a trap? It could be a trap. Who knows?
Anything could happen.
Who knows? Yeah. I mean, Evan, I'll go to you. Tyler Megill. I mean, is this the make or break? Is this it? I mean, he'll probably still be here no matter what happens. But
I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter what I say. He'll be here either way.
yeah.
Because like Frank said, it doesn't matter with the Blackburn thing. He's just going to go out there the next time since he won't be available. But they flipped the rotation around for him to get this start. So you need to go out there, more importantly, and show that you could pitch in general. Like, they flipped you around for a reason. That should be at least some sort of motivation, I would hope. And the White Sox, the Mets, both teams that walk a lot of batters. Megill has walk issues, and the only person that's going to have a boner is Jeremy Hefner, of all people watching it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm asking for, like you said, just a quality start. Just give me even like 5 2/3, 5 innings if we're lucky, and I'll take that at this point because I just don't trust him at all. And it's annoying that we're even at this point, and we jokingly said to waive anyone, waive the entire roster if they lose to the White Sox, but Tyler Megill, it's not a joke at this point where this like could be the make or break, or at least for fans trusting him further. Like, he already doesn't have fans trust. If he loses to the White Sox, I don't think any Met fan's going to want to look at him ever again.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't I don't know. Listen, I think that we all know that I have the soft spot for Megill, but I'm not an idiot. He hasn't been good, and he hasn't been able to execute whatsoever. And I mean, we'll see what happens there. But Matt, anything you want to add here with Tyler Megill going into this start? I mean, is this like it's silver platter here. I don't even know what else you can do to make the guy have any sort of success at the major league level.
No, I was gonna say, like, you brought up the point that if Tyler McGill can't perform against this White Sox team, that he shouldn't pitch in the majors anymore. I go one step further. I say he shouldn't pitch in the minors because let's be honest, the White Sox are a glorified minor league team. Like, let's be honest,
Yeah.
like the White Sox are one of those teams where it's like you show up to a tournament and one team couldn't make it because they're sick. So you go like, oh, any volunteers? You guys want to come on the field and play?
Yeah.
That's the type of team the White Sox are. And
You're not
it,
even
it,
exaggerating that much. Yeah.
it sucks for Megill, right? Because when he came up in 2021, like he actually looked solid, and you're like, okay, maybe we have a guy in the future who could be, this back of the guy rotation right here. And beginning of 2022, he looked solid, and then I remember I was at that game where it was against the Brewers, and he started off pitching well. He got hurt, and then they brought him back towards the end of the year. They put him in the bullpen, still didn't look the same. 2023 was bad, and then 2024, he gets a start on the roster this year. He was bad, gets sent down. Then they put him back in the bullpen. And I was even at that game this year where Sevy pitched against the Twins and he got lit up. And he only was able to go like 4 innings that game. And like what we were saying about Megill before, it's like, okay, maybe he's a guy that just is a bullpen guy at this point. They put him in at that point and he still shit the bed. So it's like, I don't know where this guy fits. He doesn't have a place on this team for me. And like, yeah, if he can't perform tomorrow, then he should just be gone off this organization.
Yeah, there's a strong possibility that this is the make or break here for him because again, I don't think he's not in ARB years yet, so he could be non-tendered at the end of the year. It could happen because I don't think they want to waste a spot. Is he ARB? Andrew, you'd know this better than me.
I think he should
is
be.
He ARB1? Yeah. So he probably would be given the treatment of, is it Dom Smith or who was the other pitcher that did? Robert Gazelman. There you go. I'm sorry to bring up that name. I apologize. Andrew, I'll go to you with Tyler Megill. Now, I know that you really, really hate him just for the sake of the fact that I love him. But what do you think about Tyler Megill going into this start? I mean, we're asking the bare minimum here. This is the fucking White Sox.
Yeah, like I laugh. We all make, on this show especially, we say, oh, Brett Beatty's been given all these opportunities to take third base. Tyler McGill's got that, he's the new crown of being given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and he can't just grab the fucking job by the balls and take it. But no, we are living in a world where David Peterson is statistically the best pitcher in baseball, but Tyler McGill is not even a quad A ball player. This is the world we live in. If he can't go out and give me 5 to 6 innings against the Chicago White Sox, it should, like, if there's 2 or under. Again, just walk Robert and pitch around. I saw somebody say Paul DeYoung. Paul DeYoung's in Kansas City, so we didn't have to worry about that Met killer hitting a 3-run homer late in the game. He's in Kansas City. He's playing third base next to Junior. Don't even got to worry about that. If he can't just 6 innings, 2 runs, I don't want to see you in Syracuse. Ship his ass to Wandong and leave him there. And nobody will ever touch him ever again and be done. I'm tired of talking about him and the fact that every 5th day, this guy's going to, at least maybe 2 times, we're not going to see, Tidwell, Fassel, Spro. No, we got to bring up this load of heap dog urine. This is what we got to bring up. And it's against the White Sox. So it's equal a matchup. If this dude doesn't pitch like Jacob deGrom like everybody wanted to fucking say for 2 years, if he doesn't Jacob deGrom the White Sox, go play for the Guangdong Tigers. I've had enough.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where every Mets fan is at right now with Tyler Megill. And I really come from a point as to where there's still something there in the sense of stuff, in the sense of talent. I mean, I think he has better stuff than Peterson. I've talked about this before. He just hasn't been able to apply it whatsoever. And I think that that's the main reason as to why he has continued to just be knocked down this food chain. The only main reason as to why he's so high in the pecking order is because a lot of our pitching prospects have just not been able to perform in AAA. That's the main reason why he is here. And now, for Mets fans that are saying he's the luckiest man on earth, check yourself. But the one thing that I can say about Megill is that, again, I don't think that he should be making another MLB start, but if he is going to be making another MLB start, it's going to be against a team like this. A White Sox team that, again, like we have said, in so many different analogies, they are just not good. I believe, and I'm looking at it right now, as a team combined, they have a -6 wins above replacement. Okay? They are 8. They are -8 below the next team in front of them, which is Colorado. So that's how bad. They are not just the worst team in baseball. They are historically the worst team ever. That's how bad they are in the modern era. So this is a silver platter moment right now for Tylor Megill. This is a silver platter moment as well for the Mets. The Braves are playing the Phillies, who just won. So that's one checked off the list. That's a 4-game series. They still have 3 more games to go, and they're playing the White Sox. If the Mets don't have the timely wins against the White Sox, I hate to say it, but we're sitting on the couch in October. I don't care what the hell happens in September. They're not going anywhere. It's just not like there's no coming back from that. You get swept by the White Sox, you lose the series to the White Sox, you're not coming back from that. The Angels, yeah, we lost to them. Oakland as well. They got a little talent. I get it. They can move into one.
Colorado.
Miami, Colorado. White Sox are a whole different ballgame. They're terrible. They're awful. And they have no choice but to beat the living crap out of them. They just have no choice. And hopefully they do. Anything less than a sweep is just, like, it's unacceptable to me. And let's actually get into that upcoming series. And then we'll do the usual things towards the end here. But I do want to get into that series, which, again, like we've said, is a must-win. There are no excuses. Tylor Megill is going to make the first start, which is at 8 o'clock against Jonathan Cannon. I don't know much about him. That will be on the 30th, which will be tomorrow. Game 2 will go to Jose Quintana, so no easier, let's just say that, against Davis Martin, who's actually pitched well in a small sample size. That'll be at 7:10. And then September 1st, the start of September baseball, which will be the day that the rosters expand. Sean Manaea will go up against Garrett Crochet, who is their top pitcher, who we expected to be traded at the deadline. It did not happen. Going into the series, the full-on keys to success. I mean, this seems like a layup, like we've said. Frank, I'll go to you. What do you need to see here? I think this is a pretty easy question to answer.
Win the baseball games. I mean,
Yeah.
like, don't be historically bad. And again, and that's the other thing too, is that we talk about, like, with the walks, is that, like, overall with walks, like when the Mets had the series against the Yankees and they walked Aaron Judge a bunch, I was okay with that. I was like, okay, that's actually strategy. But when you walk guys who absolutely stink, like, that just can't happen. So, like, we know the White Sox walk a lot of batters. We know the Mets walk a lot of batters. So it's like, if you want to stop walking batters, now is a good time to do it. Like, these guys, like, let them just kind of beat themselves. Don't give them free passes and give them any opportunities, because they can't do anything with it. So I feel like if you want to have, like, a walk-a-thon, just don't be the team that has more walks. And I think as an offense as well, like, you have to keep that in mind. Like, listen, these guys are just as bad as us, so you really got to maybe take more pitches than you normally would, because you know they can't throw a strike. So I feel like just kind of keeping that approach. But I think, too, the starters, they got to go deep into the games again, because there's no off day as we go into this White Sox series. And then there's no off day as they go to play the Red Sox as well. So there's still that sense of, like, okay, well, we're going to have to call up another arm, you know, once they actually make the decision who it's going to be for Nunez. Then September 1st comes around, things like that. So they still kind of have to treat the bullpen a little carefully, since they're coming right off this Arizona series. But I am kind of curious to see how the Crochet matchup goes on Sunday. I feel like that's going to be that Crochet Manaea. Like, that's actually, like, a pretty appealing matchup. So I'm curious to see how that goes. But even Crochet has not been all that great lately either. So and the Mets have done better against left-handed pitching than they have in the past, for sure. So I definitely am just kind of hoping that they have to sweep it. Like, they just have to. You know what I mean? Like, they got to find a way, honestly. Like, the White Sox are just that bad where it's like, sometimes you don't want to have the expectation of like, oh, it has to be a sweep, but they're that bad where it's like, no, it has to be a sweep. Like, there's no other universes, there's no other scenarios, like, sweep. That's it.
Yeah, and speaking of left-handed pitching, to fact check that, they are actually the second best team in all of baseball against left-handed pitching this year.
There you go.
Believe it or not, you've seen them score in bunches and be very inconsistent. One of the best against left-handed pitching, and that's quite refreshing. Let's just say, because let's not forget when teams would stack lefties against the Mets and just completely dominate us. Evan, I'll go to you. What do you think going into this series? I think again, it's pretty straightforward, but any other notes?
Beat the ever-living piss out of the kid that's already getting bullied enough. Like, it's pretty simple, the objective here. And this is the time for, like Frank said, guys that are walking batters to get their shit together. It's time for guys in the bullpen, especially a guy like Stanek, who you thought maybe could be a high-leverage guy. Utilize him in some of these games, maybe get him on track a bit, get some confidence going in some of these guys, and actually utilize these guys the right way. Especially down the stretch in general, because the way the pitching has been managed this year in general has just been questionable, to say the least. But this is the time for guys that need to get back on track to get back on track. I'm looking even at Alvarez too, who needs to get back on track in general, and he should be annihilating this pitching staff. This entire lineup should be. Like, I don't want to see them score just in one inning and then they're done for the night. I want to see them continue the offense all night long and get some confidence going throughout the entirety of the lineup. And I know that I voiced before that I didn't love how they're constantly switching things up with the lineup, but this is the series to do it if you're going to do it, because this is basically like exhibition games. Like, you should be like trial and error, and you should be winning regardless. Like, it shouldn't matter what you're throwing out there as the lineup.
Yeah, we all know that the White Sox, not only are they the worst team, they're the worst defensive team, they're the worst offensive team. Defensively, most likely they'll turn into all gold gloves against us. We already know how this drill works. But Andrew, I'll go to you. What do you think going into this series? Any keys besides step on their neck and destroy them?
Again, and we all know how this is going to go. Two absolute Walmart salesmen are on the mound. No one's ever heard of, and obviously Crochet is pitching game 3. Of course, can't get out of boy Kyle Isbell. But yeah, don't win these games 2-1. Again, because knowing how these games go, they'll play down to their competition. Then we're gonna have to rally against like some Dominican rookie ball reliever in the 9th inning, and they're gonna, little bloop single by Jose Iglesias. The Mets win 2-1, and we're sweating balls against the Chicago White Sox. Again, if they don't score at least 9 runs in every single game, minus maybe the Crochet, I'll give you Crochet. If they don't send those 10-day contract player minor league Long Island Ducks future alumni guys that they're throwing in the first 2 games, if they don't put up at least 9, I don't care what the Braves are doing in Philadelphia. Because again, murder these fools. And again, like I said, everybody get right. This is a definition of a get right series. You just had 2 highly emotional series that was playoff atmospheres. You're playing a bunch of jabronis. Light them up like foster children. There is no doubt it is the White Sox. Enough.
It's always a treat to have you on the mic. Let's just say that. Matt, if you want to finish us off here, anything you want to add to keys to this series going into Chicago?
No, look, just show up and win and perform. Like, even like I agree with Frank mentioned, like, about the walks. Like, do not walk guys. Do not give this White Sox team a chance. Do not give them a belief. Do not give them the belief that they can win a game. Because like what we saw in the Padres series with them walking a guy like Mason McCoy over and over again, while it didn't bite them the first 2 times, well, you know what? The third time, it eventually came back to bite him in the ass. So don't give them a chance. Don't give them a sliver of hope. And listen, if Pete Alonso can't get a hit or a big hit with the guys on runners in scoring position this series, then you know what? Take away his fucking McDonald's or Wendy's gift card and put him on the fucking first bus out to Anaheim to play with the fucking Angels. Because this is a guy who he has to show up at some point. And if he can't do it against this team, well then he'll never do it. But yeah, listen, like I said, if you don't sweep this team, you don't deserve to make the playoffs. Like that's just flat out and simple. And you know what? I can see a game where because this is similar. Like the Mets are very similar to what the New York Rangers are. You play up to your competition, but you play down to your competition as well. And I can pretty much see a game this series where like the Rangers where they played the Sharks earlier at MSG where they were up big, they were up like 6-1. And then towards the end of the game, the Sharks made it close, and they made like a 6-5 game. So I could easily see a game where the Mets are up like 6-1, and then you got fucking Brazaban trotting out there and giving up back-to-back solo shots to making it a close game. I could easily see that because, once again, this is the Mets. And even like, back a couple weeks ago, maybe like a month ago in mid-July, when we were talking about when the Mets were on that hot stretch and the Phillies were going through that rough stretch, and there was some talk of like, okay, maybe – if the Mets keep winning, the Phillies keep falling, maybe the Mets could actually win the NL East this year. And when I was looking ahead to the schedule now, and we were even texting in our group chat that me, Evan, and a couple other people are in, and I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, if I'm going to be honest, I'm not really concerned about the teams like the Orioles, the Padres, the Diamondbacks, teams like that, because I know the Mets can beat them. Where I was really afraid was the teams like the A's, the Angels, the White Sox, because this is what this Mets team does. They just, like I said, they play up the competition, but at the same time, they are so good at playing down the competition. I don't understand it. I don't get it. But like I said before, and like you said, anything less than a sweep is unacceptable, and they don't deserve to play in the playoffs this year.
Yeah. Again, like I've said, just in general, what I would say about this team going into Chicago is like, it's not just the fact that there are no excuses. It's the fact that you are being handed the biggest cookie known to man. Now, listen, Philly has been known to blow games against Atlanta, but this is a competitive team to go up against Atlanta. You're not going to see this very often, and I'm just really hoping this is what I'm hoping. These two teams are the top two in walks issued. I was in attendance for the Mets-A's game, the series finale, where there was so many walks that, I mean, you ran out of counting fingers, of course, where it was the longest game in the pitch clock era in a 9-inning span. I am asking that we don't have like a 3 hour to 4 hour game. Let's not do that 3 times in a row, because there's a strong possibility that like you have 3 hours and 45 minutes for 3 straight games. Like I feel like that could obviously happen, especially with something that bothers Frank so much with them walking the 9-hitter. There is going to be, I feel like there is going to be an obstacle. I don't know what it's going to be, but again, they don't deserve to play October baseball if they're losing to this team. Because like we've said, again, like Matt just said, these teams that have absolutely nothing to play for, they're some of the worst teams to play. That's like the age-old story. These teams are more relaxed. This is a different element because you're bringing in the White Sox, who, like we have said many, many times, suck. They are a different element of suck. That's how bad they are. So I hope that they take advantage of this because, again, it's do or die right now. And I hope that they treat this like a playoff game and just absolutely destroy them. I'm hoping to see a lot of crooked numbers, not just one, and then the other 8 innings are just a bunch of zeros in 1, 2, 3 innings. Let's hope that the offense maybe see a little bit of consistency against a team that's so awful. Now, let's get to the injury reports and studs and duds, and we'll get out of here. Paul Blackburn, the latest of the news. He did play catch on Sunday at Citi Field. He is expected to return to the Mets rotation following that 15-day time frame with Tyler Megill in his spot. Christian Scott has been throwing velocity pitches and off-speed pitches with more intensity off of flat ground recently. He has yet to throw off of a mound or off of the slope, and there is no timetable so far at this current moment for him facing live hitters. Danel Nunez, the latest news in injury land over here. reportedly was not recovering well between outings this week, and he was not available out of the Mets bullpen. And we finally got an answer with a lot of awkward going on where they had a closed off meeting. It was very weird, but he ends up on the 15-day IL after just one appearance, which is quite a hit to the Mets bullpen, let's just say. And they're going to have to find a way to figure it out. And again, like this upcoming series against the White Sox, maybe they can like actually, switch things in and out and see if they have some kind of plan. And I'm hoping that they trust Maton a little bit more, like Frank said, against a White Sox team, like we've said. That is terrible. Studs and duds. After this series, we have to do this after the beginning. we keep forgetting to do it because it's on the last of the list here. But studs and duds, one player that has played very well in this series against the Diamondbacks, one player that has not, one that we want to call out, one that we take a lot of advantage of. I feel like we'll have a little bit of doubles here with duds, but we'll start with studs. Andrew, I'll go to you. Who do you want to put on your pedestal for these last 3 games?
All right, I'm going to probably, throw a little curveball here because, again, has he been the greatest trade deadline acquisition? No, but he's been better than what we needed. And Jesse Winker, yes, has he not provided the power? Of course. And he's got that one, obviously the one homer. But again, couple of multi-hit games. He doesn't hit that double in the 9th inning. We don't win this game today. So, again, everyone's going to probably go with the guys that hit for the RBIs. But Jesse Winker, again, yes, is he slugging as much as we would like? No. But he's provided value for, again, an upgrade over DJ Stewart. And he's, again, giving this team a little fire, too. Again, the unaccountable, statistical value. He's been giving you some production. So I'll give little Jesse Winky a little bit of love.
Frank?
Yeah, I'll give it to a guy. I don't know if I've given it to him once this year yet, but I'll give it to Alonso. He had a home run in the first game, home run in the third game, and he had a sacrifice fly in the second game. Like, yes, would it be great if he hit the home runs with guys on base? Sure.
Yeah, that sack fly was all Marte. I don't even want to hear it.
Well, no, that's true. And also the awful tag by Del Castillo for Arizona. So there's a little bit of everything there. But I just feel like overall seeing him do it more than once in a series without it being in the same game and a game where they won by 1 run, like, I feel like that's a little bit more like it. So I'm a little more encouraged by that. And I just feel like I probably haven't given it to him all year. So he had a pretty good series. Still not his not his caliber. Again, like, that's so frustrating. Like, he was like an RBI like machine. This guy driving like 120 or whatever, but that just hasn't been the case. But I hope he could build on it. And like we said, this is a great opportunity. Like, if you were ever gonna start a hot streak, this is a really good opportunity for you to do that.
All right, Evan, I'll go to you. You got a stud for this series?
I'm going to pick a weird one just because I don't want to be the one to pick Lindor. I'm going to go with Danny Young. He didn't pitch much in the series, but in the 2 appearances he had, he got some pretty big outs, especially the one on Jock Peterson, which was really huge at the time. And unfortunately, of course, in the second game, didn't win that game, so it does leave a little bit of a stain on what value he brought. But he continues to be a surprise for this bullpen and a guy that you could really trust. And apparently he was even available today, which would have been, I mean, the fact that he would have been available for 3 straight games is just absurd. I just don't want them to run his arm into the ground next. But yeah, he's been pitching very well, and I figured I'd give him some love.
He did walk Jock Peterson when he was trying to bunt because they refused to let him bat against lefties. That was a little concerning, but
yeah, that one was. But
they were able to throw him out because Jock just does weird stuff when he gets on the base. He just feels like stealing. Like he thinks he's someone he's not, and then just makes boneheaded decisions.
We have had quite some heartbreakers against Jock Peterson as Mets fans. So if he wants to walk him, be my guest. Also, if Jock can come over to the Mets and stop killing us, that would be nice. But apparently he only likes West Coast teams. So, Matt, I'll go to you. Stud for this series. You got one?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the guy who pitched the first game of the series, and Sean Manaea. I think Manaea is just continuing his hot stretch of recently. And I mean, look, ever since the All-Star break, where and especially after the Brave series, where he really made those adjustments to how he's pitched, in terms of the arm slot and in terms of the 3 pitches that he's mostly now using now, because really, when you watch his starts, the three main pitches he uses is the fastball, and he started using that fastball up in the zone more, getting a lot more swings and misses. Obviously, we saw that last night with the 11 strikeouts. His sweeper's working well, and especially his sinker down low in the zone, that's working well. And, earlier in the year, especially with this starting rotation, the one thing we were begging with guys was length. And Sean Manaea in the beginning of the year, he wasn't giving you length. There was a lot of five inning starts, 4 inning starts, but recently he's put a lot of stretches and games together where he's gone anywhere between 6 and 7 innings. I know yesterday he went on the first game he went 6 2/3 innings. And another thing that was really hurting Manaea earlier in the year was not going after guys, nibbling around the zone and walks. Well, yesterday was the first game of the series was again another game where 0 walks again, which is really impressive. And the one thing that I've loved about Manaea is like what I mentioned before about how he attacks hitters, because now that he actually has confidence in his stuff, he actually goes after guys, he attacks, and that's why you're seeing him get a lot more swings and misses and another 11 strikeout game. And right now Manaea is a guy for me, and Carson, I know you mentioned like last month with a lot of people were saying bring back a guy like Severino for next year, and you mentioned that a guy that the Mets should really be looking to bring back if it works in terms of the money wise and year wise is a guy like Sean Manaea, and I wholeheartedly agree. Now, look, there's the danger of you go into free agency, because let's be honest, he is going to opt out after this offseason.
Oh, yeah.
And there is a danger that a team comes in and just offers him stupid money and offers some dumb years. But for me, if the price is right, if the years are right, I'm all in favor of bringing back a guy like Sean Manaea, because he could easily be a guy that is a great third, fourth starter for this guy. And really, in terms of how he's pitching like a good second pitcher this year. So if you could bring him back next year for, like I said, good money, good years, and he's your third, fourth guy, I mean, that's just a great option for your rotation.
All you can expect from Sean Manaea is stability, and I think that is one thing that you need from the middle of the rotation. And we've talked about guys kind of making these starts, especially with the injury history we've had with a lot of our frontline guys, such as Senga recently, and we all know what we went through with DeGrom towards his last few years here. I mean, those are the guys that we really need, and if he can be that guy going deep into the game, having more confidence in his stuff, like he said there, I mean, I think that he's able to make, I think he's a guarantee to give you 30 to 35 starts every single year. Every single year. He's going to take the ball every 5 days. That's what he's been able to do. With Severino, who knows? He has a history of injury history. I know that he's been healthy this year, but we could be reaching quite some capacity because he has struggled recently. All right. You want it? You want it? All right. David Peterson, you're my stud for this series. Don't get used to it. The one thing that I will say about Peterson is obviously his ability to contact manage this year has been one of the main bread and butters to him having a lot of success, because we all know that the stuff isn't great, but if he's able to locate, he's able to make competitive pitches, he's been able to go deep into games, and that's what we have been seeing recently. One thing that I will say that pointed it out to put him over the top with Peterson was that big double play ball he got towards the end of his outing today. And because we have seen a lot of situations where the defense melts down. I think was it McNeil who screwed up? Was it Lindor? I don't know what happened at second base or something. It was McNeil. Yeah, fuck McNeil. But no. But one thing I will say is that Peterson was able to collect himself. He didn't melt down, and he was able to get the ground ball. And I will tell you, I was pumped. I was pumped when that happened. Let's just say I celebrated fairly well, and I was very impressed. Again,
why don't you record
don't get used to it. What?
Why don't you record it? Why can't we see like a video? You'd be like, yeah, that's my man Peterson. There you go, DP. Like, where's like that content?
Like I said, don't get used to it. Let's get to
we
the
need
dud.
more Carson DP content. Come on.
Let's get more dud. Get some duds. I have like 20 other players to make fun of. Okay, we have to balance this out somehow. Let's get to duds of this series. There were some. Oof. Okay. Andrew, I'll go right back to you.
I mean, who do you go? I mean, it would be obvious to say Edwin Diaz, but obviously he comes back. But you know what? Still, because if you're gonna give David Peterson love, again, you had the opportunity to sweep him. Yes, he bounces back greatly in Game 3, which is nice. You left the game on the table, so you know Edwin Diaz, you got to lay on the sword on this one.
Yeah. Very, very fair. Frank?
Yeah, I mean, it's Diaz. It's not only for the home run, but it's also the walks, and like we've talked about, it's like they put him into a decent situation where it's like you're coming in with 2 outs, so they're asking you to just get 1 out, and then you get the 9th. But just to be coming in walking batters, like they just can't keep doing that to yourself, because then what happens is that when you do miss with the slider, now it's a grand slam. Now it's not just like a solo home run. They're like, okay, we can still come back. It's like, when it's a grand slam, it's like, forget it. So it's like you kind of did like everything you can't do. You can't walk batters and you can't hang sliders over the middle. So it's like he made multiple mistakes in just like a very short amount of time.
17 of the 18 pitches he threw today in his bounce back outing were fastballs. So that was interesting. We'll see if that's an interesting
But the
development.
thing is that like he needs his slider though in order to
He
be
does.
like
Oh, he
Edwin
absolutely does.
needs his
Yeah.
slider. He doesn't have it right now, but he needs it. So he can't just
Oh, yeah.
always get away with that. Especially because his fastball is not 102 anymore like it was prior to the injury. So
Yeah.
it's tough.
His
It's
fastball
really
has
tough.
the shape as to where he can get endless whiffs with it, but he still needs that that type of part of the zone, because if he misses with the fastball, it can get tagged, because he still has these tendencies to go 96, 97 as opposed to 98, 99. Evan, I'll go to you on a dud you would like to point out.
To pick someone that's not Diaz, I'll be an asshole. I'm gonna say Alvarez, and my reasoning why is he made Eric Chavez look good for saying don't pull the ball. He made him look good for not pulling the ball, because he had that huge RBI, which granted probably would have been a home run if he was pulling the ball, because it was left right down the dick, but that's besides the point. And on top of that, he had a couple of errors behind the plate, so I'll go with Alvarez on that, just because there's no one that particularly outside of like Diaz in that game that played like horrendous through the stretch of the series, but yeah, I feel like I gotta pick him just because of that.
All right, Matt?
So I'm gonna go with another pitcher here, and it's actually the guy who pitched the second game of the series in Luis Severino.
Yeah.
Sevy did not pitch great in this game at all. I mean, apart from the first inning where he had a quick, easy 1-2-3 inning, he really struggled in that game. Especially the second inning where he threw like 30-something pitches and he had like 51 pitches through 2 innings. Sorry, that's not good enough. And I mean, listen, I got to dock you points just for giving up an RBI single to Luis Guillorme in the Big 24. Like
Thought
that's
about that.
Yeah.
that's bad, like without a question of a doubt. But he only gave you 4 2/3, 8 hits, 4 earned runs. You know, along with giving up a home run to Jock Peterson and to Corbin Carroll. But I don't know how he only ended that game with 1 walk and 9 strikeouts. Like, I don't get it, because he was not
By
good at
giving
all.
up hits, he was falling behind in counts, so he's giving good pitches to hit, and they get hit over the fence.
No,
That's
yeah.
kind of the trade-off with not throwing strikes, quality strikes, I should say.
The only thing I can really give him credit for is finishing that game after taking that ball off the foot. Like that's really about it. Because listen, he had that great start against the Marlins where he had the complete game shutout. Had that okay start against the Padres where he only gave you 5 innings, but I think he only gave up 1 run that start. And I was looking for a bit better of a bounce back game from this, but yeah, not great from Sevy in the start.
Yeah, and another actually a stud I want to mention. Brandon Nimmo had a really good series as
He
well.
did.
Lindor
Yes,
as
he
well.
did.
We can put in there. I'm actually gonna the tag team on this because I mean I gotta put Diaz on here. I mean this is my guy. I gotta hold him accountable. I will still defend him to the ends of the earth. But he had nothing. He had nothing in that second game, in the second game of the series, and it cost him big time. And again, like we've said, that looked like the big backbreaker. Maybe that was the Kurt Suzuki moment. They bounced back with another win, so that's good. But I mean, he just didn't have it, and he got the bounce back as well. He finished off the game again. Like I said, I really did like them putting him back out there the next day. So he doesn't dwell on it and it doesn't stick in his head, because we all know the mental aspect with Edwin Diaz is full-on amplified. And Darren Rivera actually put out about a good point here where he says that he doesn't like Diaz pitching with inherited runners, especially when he's not his dominant self. He walks batters, then he gives up bombs. And yes, it is a good point. I understand like giving him a clean inning, but here's the thing. This is your $102 million reliever. If he cannot pitch in those situations, I mean, what are we doing here? And I mean, I would trust Diaz in any single situation because I know how good he can be. I understand that it has been a struggle for him this year, but in any situation that he comes in, it's like, let's go, man. You got to perform. I mean, that they've paid him to do that, and I know that they want to, make the decision as to where, maybe you put him in a good position or whatever. It's kind of like how you're looking at it with Pete Alonso. It's either you perform or you don't perform, and it determines a lot of things that go out in these games. And that's how it looks out with Diaz. He's the $102 million reliever that you paid. It wasn't the regime right now that paid him, but it was the regime before, and, you're counting on him to be that guy. And Diaz obviously took accountability for it because he's Diaz and he's a stand-up guy. And let me list off every single thing that's amazing about him. But at the end of the day, I mean, he definitely was a dud. He was the reason as to why we did not sweep this series when we were in a good position to do so. And, that's it. Again, like Andrew said, you got to fall on the sword here. But he got the bounce back, so that's good. Hopefully, good things going into Chicago again, a team that sucks. I think we're going to end it off here with some final words. I'll go to our guests first. Thank you guys for coming on. Make sure to check out their show, Mets Central Podcast. They also have for the Rangers, if you're a Rangers fan as well, they do content there.
New York Rangers,
Evan,
not
I'll go to
Texas
you.
Rangers. We got to preference that.
The New York Rangers, yes.
Unfortunately,
that doesn't
because
win
the Texas Rangers win. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the Texas Rangers actually get the fucking job done, unlike the Rangers. Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to say? Go ahead.
No, yeah. Thank you for having us on, first of all. And if you want to check us out, like they plugged, some Mets Central, Rangers Central. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, yeah, it's there, Core Python. But yeah, all I could say to wrap it up, the Mets just, if they don't beat the White Sox, like just to hit the point home that we've already hammered enough and beating a dead horse here. If you don't sweep the White Sox, you don't belong in the postseason at all. And at that point, I think all of us are just going to turn the page to football and then be miserable there instead. So that's really all I have to say.
Good point. Matt, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, no, same here from me. Yeah, thank you for having us on. I really enjoyed the channel, and I like your guys' content. So thank you once again for letting us on. And yeah, follow us over at Mets Central, at Rangers Central, and also follow me on Twitter with this Twitter handle. And yeah, listen, just beat the White Sox, please. Sweep them. Like, I'm not asking for a lot. Actually, never mind, because it's the Mets, so I am asking for a lot. But just beat them. And listen, like I said, if you don't sweep the White Sox, you don't deserve to play in the playoffs.
Yeah. Enough said. To my partners in crime here, Andrew, the one who's never here.
Yeah, just beat the Spirit Halloween employees in about a week. Whoop their ass. I'm going to enjoy watching Lucas Erceg carve up the Astros. Just beat the White Sox. That's all you guys. So keep it simple.
All right. Frank?
Yeah, no, I mean, same thing. Just win. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Is that, like, you've lost too many of these games. Like, enough is enough. I mean, like, you had your, we laid down, we didn't feel like trying, we lost all these other games. Like, no more. Like, you can't do that anymore. Like, you don't get any free passes, and like, you've had too many. So now it's time to just show up and just take care of business.
All right. Tyler Megill, the ball goes to you. That's all I got to say. I mean, this is make or break here. And then Jose Quintana right after that. So this might be stressful. Who knows? But hopefully we get good results. Hopefully we get in the win column as opposed to the loss column, which is not good. And somebody has to tell the Mets that, just in general. But other than that, thank you so much for everyone who came through live, for those of you watching on playback, for those of you who are listening on audio the next day, for those of you who tuned in live for the entire thing, for those of you who came in for a little bit. Make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already. Turn on post notifications for this very podcast. We are recorded after every single series on Sundays and on Thursdays, depending on how these series line up. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on TikTok and on X. Frank's post games after every single game. Some are overreactions, some are underreactions. Make sure to follow everyone individually as well as our special guests. Thank you guys so much for coming on, Evan and Matt from the Mets Central podcast. Their links are in the description as well. And after all of that, let's go Mets. We'll see you guys next time.